Hello, everyone. Andres Gamboa here, and another episode of the Ponytails podcast. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time, let me catch you up a little bit on what we do here and why we do it, and then we can jump on and get talking with our guest. So, the Ponytails podcast, we interview people who sold books for a company called Southwestern Advantage. They've been around since 1868, literally just right after the Civil War. And what they do is they recruit college kids to go and sell books and websites door to door every summer during their college summer. So there's about 100,000 people that have been doing this for the last almost 150 years or something like that. But what we do is we go find them, ask them what they're up to now, ask them how that experience shaped them for better or worse, oftentimes better, sometimes worse, and just overall remembering some of the funny experiences that happen, as you can imagine, when you go door to door, because we went 80 hours a week on straight commission, sometimes without even having a place to live in a different part of the country. So oftentimes, even European kids will come and do this. In fact, there's a bunch of them on their way here now. Look out. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. If you have a good time, please make sure you check out some of the other episodes. We have had a blast for well over 200 episodes now, and we are going to continue to do so until we reach all those 100,000, hopefully. So, a little bit about my guest today. I have Dana Potthoff with me. It's going to be a blast. She is currently living in Brooklyn, New York, went to the University of California in Los Angeles, UCLA, or as I call it, UCLA. And she was part of the SEEDS organization, originally from San Diego. She sold from 2002 to 2004 and a half, and then came back and did a half summer in 07 and 08 for a grand total of 5 summers. I'm sure we're going to get a reason for that jump in there. Although, as a person who also skipped a couple summers or a summer there, I could probably understand. So we'll get into that and some more stuff about how she is doing with Southwestern Consulting. Big shout out to Will Metcher as well, by the way, for being a partner here on the show. And if you guys want to support us, be sure to listen through all of the ads. We have had a blast recording them for you guys. I think they're funny and I think they're entertaining. And it just really means a lot to us that you check out, because all of them are people who sold books and are sponsoring us and supporting us so I can feed my dogs and all that stuff. Oh, and Dana's favorite scroll is number 2. I will greet this day with love in my heart. And so wait, what a wonderful one. Just what a good way to live life. Just greeting days with love in your heart. So when I come back, we will be on with Dana. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
I'm excited
I'm
to have this
excited.
conversation.
Yeah, I'm
So,
excited.
so I call Will Metcher and I'm like, hey man, any ideas on who else we should have on the show? Just suggestions, because I talk with Will, every once in a while, and we're just
He's a
buddies.
sponsor.
And he's a sponsor, right? But that's not the only reason I talk to him.
Well,
I talk to him because
shout out to Will.
baseball, Cardinals. Shout out to Will Metcher. Just
Yeah.
good
He's a
human.
stellar human.
Yeah, just a solid, just one of those. And my wife's met him before, and every time we hang out with him or I'm on the phone with him and I hang up, I was like, she goes, "Oh, he's just so great."
He
Yeah,
is.
Will's pretty nice.
Yeah, true.
But he goes, "Dude, you needed to interview Dana." I'm like, "Who's that?" He goes, "She's like the most badass person ever," and he hyped you up, and so I'm like, "Great, that sounds like the right kind of person to be on the show." Although I think anybody that sold books for at least one summer is pretty badass. So
Fair.
you did 5. Holy moly.
Yes.
So all that to say, I'm excited to have you on here.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But let's jump in. I always like to start off with what you're up to now and kind of how you got. So let's go from 08 to now and just kind of tell us the story of what happened since you've been an alumni. How did you end up at Southwestern Consulting? And any major highlights that you want to share. Feel free to go into as big as detail as you want to, or as brief as you want to. I feel like this is a juicy story from how you're looking at me.
No, it's just a long period of time, 2008 to now. Okay. So last summer, yes, was 2008. And then, like most of us, it was, I was a little guppy trying to find my way. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And my DSM, whatever, the guy at the top, was originally Nate Vogel, the great Nate.
Yes.
And so I actually reached out to Nate and asked for some guidance and was just like, what should I do now? And he said, you really should talk to Steve Adams, this guy at Tom James. So I interviewed with Tom James. I interviewed with a couple companies. So I interviewed with Tom James. I interviewed with Stryker Medical Supply. And because when I first went to college, I was a bio major pre-med. So originally I wanted to be a doctor. And then I got weeded out of that program real fast. But I was always interested in like medicine. And in high school, I got to watch a hip replacement surgery from like Grey's Anatomy, how they have the people up in the top.
Yeah.
I got to sit up there and watch one. So anyway, Stryker was interesting to me. So I interviewed with them. And then I also interviewed with Thomson Reuters, the tax software, whatever it was. Yeah.
Roger Smith is there. He's like a big time person
Big
there.
wig. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I interviewed with them as well, because I think a lot of those were all like feeders, for book people.
Yeah.
And then Stryker was one of those that was like, I guess, a really big deal. But if you sold books, you had a better chance, at making it. So I interviewed with all of them, and then kind of crazy fun. Oh, not that crazy, but I felt really bad. So I was sitting in the airport to fly to Austin, Texas to go meet Steve Adams. So Steve Adams is a big guy, up at the top at Tom James out of Austin. And he said, let me fly you to Austin and, meet you and all that. So I'm sitting in the airport waiting to fly to him. And I had been interviewing with Thomson Reuters for longer. And sitting in the airport, Thomson offered me the position and I accepted it.
Oh, nice.
I verbally accepted it as I'm sitting in the airport to fly to Austin, but I'm already in the airport. So I might as well just go.
Yeah.
And
They got good tacos.
Yeah.
Might as well just check it out.
I've never been there. And it's a free trip. Who cares? And he was putting me up in the Four Seasons. So I was like,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's better than the Three Seasons. That's so nice.
So I flew to Austin and Steve won me over. And I remember just touring his little office, and like the closet, the like linen closet had been turned into the tie room where they had all the ties hanging. And I just loved it because I was always into fashion too. Not that Tom James is fashion by any means, but the idea of like clothing and putting together outfits, and like I loved that kind of stuff. So I did feel really bad because I had to go back to the woman I had accepted the job from and tell her never mind, and she was not pleased.
Yeah, that makes sense. But hey, you got to do what you got to do.
I had to do what I had to do. And I'm grateful that I chose that route because I am not a tax software gal. That I'm much more clothing than tax software.
Tax software takes a special kind of person, I feel like.
Very
not that you're not special.
No, very special. I'm not the analytic, like detailed. I mean, I color code things. Oops, clearly, as you can see my bookshelf. But that would not have been the right fit for me to be calling on CPAs all day. No. I had more fun calling on like attorneys and like, financial advisors and commercial real estate guys. That was more my jam. Yeah. So I took the job with Tom James.
And I was going to say, we should explain real quick for the uninitiated what Tom James means. It's a custom suits company. So people, your job was to go business to business, showing up to whoever and saying, "Hey, I got some pretty badass suits," which they are. To be fair, they're great suits.
Yes.
And get them to buy some suits.
Yes. So Tom James is the largest custom clothier in the world. They're the only fully vertically integrated clothing company in the world. They own the sheep, and they make the wool from. And their high end suit, like their highest end suit, is considered the nicest suit in the world. So
it's
Oxford,
yes. What is it? The rumor is that they sometimes would make the green jacket for the Masters.
Yes, that is true. That is not a rumor.
That's true.
That's true.
And then and also
I don't know if they still do it, but
and like that sports analysts like that you see on ESPN and on Fox Sports after like there's like halftime and they're talking about Tom Brady didn't throw a good enough spiral, but they're wearing like this nice suit or whatever. Like that's they're wearing. A lot of them are wearing Tom James, is from what I understand.
Some of them are wearing a Tom James. Some of them, I have other friends that are in the clothing business now, and a lot of them, to get their name out, they make those guys suits for free. which we did not do at
Dang.
Tom James. So that's hard to compete with. And then a lot of the athletes work with another company that I think is now out of business, or at least when I was selling, they were working with another company. But yes, a lot of those flashy suits, or even just because they're custom fit. Like a lot of athletes don't fit off the rack very well, so they have to do custom. Oh, the suit for which coach was it? I want to say it was the coach for the Saints years ago when they won the Super Bowl. When he was like doing the trophy ceremony at the end, his suit was a Tom James suit, and the pinstripes were words.
Yeah, like good old
Spencer Hayes.
Spencer Hayes. He had a
Yes,
happy, healthy, terrific on his pinstripes.
exactly. So we did make the suit for that guy, and it said, I think it said like, go Saints in the pinstripes.
That's so
So
fun.
yeah.
Now, I do want to continue with what happened, but I have one question about Tom James stuff really
Yes.
quick. What was the coolest person, or like the
Oh.
most like, because when you're selling like high custom ad suits, these aren't like low budget people. We're talking about, you're talking to people with money. What was so it's kind of like when you go sell big brick in the book field, where you're talking about like
My fave.
big money. Yeah, that's actually one of our rapid fire questions. His favorite kind of turf.
Yes.
But what was like one of the craziest like people that you met, or like or situations that happen where you're like, this person has so much money, or they're super money, or something crazy like that?
Yeah. So my favorite clients were the ones that would like clear out their whole closet and let me redo their whole wardrobe. Those ones were fun. Because they bought a lot of clothes,
Yeah, it's a bag. That's a pony.
That's more than a pony. That's like the Kentucky Derby. Yeah. But so my favorite, so I started with Tom James in San Francisco because they didn't have like a robust LA office. So I moved to San Francisco to take the job. And actually there's some fun lessons I learned from that interview with Steve Adams that I still use in my career. But that I teach leaders. But I started in Tom James, San Francisco, and my favorite client in San Francisco, well, one of my clients is kind of fun. His dad was the original Zorro, like from the black and white days.
No way.
Yeah, and he was in
cool.
some of the, because Zorro was a show or a movie. I think it was a TV show.
Might have been a TV show at the time. Like you're talking about, like not like Andrew and Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas. You're talking
like
about
black and white.
Yeah, like Zorro, the Hispanic Batman.
Yes. And my client, because he had these like black and white photos on his wall in his office, and he was in one of the episodes, or a few of the episodes, as a kid. So he had these little like little blonde kid. Yeah. But my favorite client was a huge, like big time attorney in San Francisco, and he had cleared out his whole closet and had me come to his fancy house in Marin and like redo his entire wardrobe. But fun. Some of the most fun experiences are just like funny. So through Tom James is how I met Kevin Hart.
You met Kevin Hart?
Yeah. So
that's fun.
Yeah. So we were doing, so I moved back to LA. So I was in San Francisco for like a year and a half, Tom James. San Francisco was not my jam. It just wasn't for me. I needed warm weather. So I moved back to LA to open the downtown LA office for Tom James and kind of start that office. And so, being back in LA, and when I was in college, like just out of college, I was in entertainment. So I did music. So yes. And the years that I didn't sell books in college, I basically built a PR and marketing firm. So I had been kind of in that world and in that scene. And when you're in LA and you're even remotely in that, you kind of get immersed in it. So I knew a lot of people in the entertainment, but that's that's a common thing, is that you're going to get involved in something related to something. So we were part of the suite, the guest like gifting suite for NBA All-Star Weekend, I think. Cool. That was being hosted in LA. Yes. So we were part of the gifting suite, which meant we did this for the SBs too, but which meant that anybody that came through, like any of the celebrities that came through, would get a free custom shirt. So it was like a free shirt to get our foot in the door. So
nice.
So yeah, that.
So you met Kevin Hart that way?
That's how I met Kevin Hart.
That's so
So
fun.
that was the year that, if anybody's a Kevin Hart fan, that was the first year that he recorded his comedy special.
Yeah.
Was at that NBA All-Star weekend. It was Shaq's Comedy Jam
Oh,
or something.
yeah.
Um, and so we were in the
Wow.
behind the scenes, like in the, not the dressing rooms, but it was like little gifting suites behind. And so I heard that entire comedy special just on audio because I heard him delivering it.
That's the one where he talks about like his baby car seat. When he's like, you can't pull up with the baby car seat in the car. And you look over and you're like, hey, how's it going, girl? And he like, the girl looks over. He's like, what's on the back? Don't look at that. Look at me. Like, that's that special. It's a great
Yeah.
special.
Hilarious. So, fun little story so actually I met another celebrity there that ended up becoming one of my really close friends. But Kevin walks up to the little gifting table. Oh, I also met LL Cool J. I almost died. Actually, that was the second time I met him, but I almost died. So Kevin Hart like walks up to the little gifting suite, and he's tiny, and I'm 5'11".
Yeah.
So
he's like 5'3" or something.
If that. So I'm 5'11", and I was also wearing platform like stilettos.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was probably a good 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". And I remember them. They were blue suede stilettos. And he walks up to the our table. So you have these tables in the gifting suites where all these people have their whatever their thing is that they're putting into the gift bag. And he walks up, and literally the first thing he says, he looks at me and he goes, up, right? He had to look way up, hands on his hips. And he goes, I am not intimidated by you. It was awesome.
Oh, Kevin.
Yeah, that was fun. Oh, Kevin. Yeah.
So
that was fun though.
So I'm the second funniest comic you've met then, is what you're
saying. Oh,
saying.
no, not even close. One of my closest friends is one of the original kings of comedy.
So I'm the 17th. I'm in the pace setter. Okay. I'm in the
You're in the pace setter. Yeah.
Gosh, that's so fun. So you got to meet all these really cool people in this experience with Tom James. That's a unique twist. We haven't heard someone with Tom James experience that has got to meet Kevin Hart.
Some of them were very few of them were Tom James. More of it was just having been in entertainment and living in LA. But yeah, that one was a fun experience, the Kevin Hart experience. And then the other person that I met in the gifting suite, well, there was a handful, right? LL was there, and I was like, he's the one celebrity that I just would get starstruck over for some reason. His skin is immaculate.
Yeah,
like
still is. He just did the intro for the Formula One Miami Grand Prix for the drivers, and like they had him on camera. I'm like, does this guy age?
No.
Like he has just him and Anne Hathaway. It's like you look at a picture of them now and 20 years ago, and you're like, I can't tell what year this is. Like,
no,
they look the same. Yeah.
He's such a nice guy. He's so nice, and he's so charming. He's like,
I bet.
Yeah, so charming. Anyway, one of my summers, by the way, one of the girls in our org sold books to his wife. They lived on Long Island.
To Mrs. J? To Mrs. Cool J?
Mrs. Cool J, yes.
Is she Mrs. Warm J? No. Cool. Mrs. J.
Mrs. Smith. But
wife
yes.
Of LL.
Of LL Cool J. Anyway, the other person I met in the gifting suite that day was Shamar Moore, who
from Criminal Minds,
Criminal Minds, yes, SWAT. And he invited me to his birthday party. And I ended up going to his birthday party, and then he ended up becoming one of my really close friends when I lived in LA. My core group of girlfriends that I still have in LA, that's where we all met. Sham's house. That's
so fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Random. That's so cool. What a cool way to experience life when you're, when you're meeting people who are fun like that, where it's just like, hey, you seem like you're above life or larger than life, but real deep down, you're just like another person, in which they are, right? When you meet a celebrity, you think they're like these. It's like, oh, you just, they're just regular. And in fact, a lot of them are like lower on the rung than regular people. Like, interesting.
They're not that great.
Really? Well, I mean, you hear that. You hear that often from like, Hollywood, right? Where
Mhm.
people meet celebrities and they kind of let them down a little bit.
Yeah.
That's
There's great
that.
people, but there's some that are not so great. So,
Dang.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's so fun. So you did Tom James, and I'm sure we'll come back and visit this as we go through our why you skipped a couple of summers. But so let's keep moving it. So you go to Tom James. How long were you there for?
Oh, I want to say 4 years, or maybe not quite 4 years. So I started in December of 2008. That was interesting too, right? Because that was right after
The
the
world shut
recession
down.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because, when you're starting a business, and it's commission-based sales. So when you're starting a business in a recession, we didn't know any different than to do the amount of activity we had to do to sell anything. But I remember the more experienced people were saying like, "Oh my gosh, we're having to do like 5 times as much activity just to get any sales." Um,
Mm.
but yeah, 2008, and so I was in San Francisco 2008, 2009, and then moved back to LA 2010, and then I left Tom James in 2012. So yeah, about four
Yeah.
years ish, maybe a little less.
Solid run.
Yeah, solid run. Had some cool experiences, great clients, great people at Tom James. I mean, it's Spencer Hayes. It was Spencer Hayes's like main company, or like the first company he
Yeah. It
started or
was like his
whatever.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah, it was his baby. So, he was just so principled and such a nice guy that the leadership there was just amazing. And again, there's so much I learned from my leaders that I coach leaders on now, like
Yeah.
the right way to lead. So it was actually really hard to leave because it was leaving the people, kind of like how a lot of people have a hard time leaving the book field because they don't want to leave the
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was hard to leave the people.
I was going to ask you about that. You said that there was a lesson that you learned from Stephen Adams when you went to Austin that you still use and you teach today that he
Oh yeah.
well, wanted to follow up on that. What was this about?
Yeah, so this is also where he really got me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this instead of that tax thing. Um, I literally remember this like it was yesterday. He had one of those huge executive desks. I'm talking about, like the big Mr.
Yeah.
Belvedere desk. Yeah.
Yeah. You walk in and there's like a button that brings up a guy with a coat and rim.
Yeah.
Or it opens up a layer. You're like,
Yeah.
hey.
It was one of those huge, fancy, like I'm sure it weighed like 1,000 pounds, oak
Sure.
or mahogany desks.
It weighs more than a bad marriage. It's a lot. It's
That's a
it's
good,
a
I
heavy
like
desk.
that. Okay, that's good. That's good.
My dad says that, I think. He's divorced, so he might know.
Oh, well, there you go. Makes sense.
Sorry to derail your entire story on that.
All good.
All right.
Probably. It
Moving
probably
on.
does way more.
It's
So
a big desk.
it was a huge desk. And Steve is not a huge guy, but it was a huge desk. And he's sitting behind his desk, and I take up my little chair. And this is after he had like taken me on a tour of the office. And I think he'd taken me to lunch. And, he was like whining and dining me. And then he's like, I just want to sit down and chat. And mind you, we'd done several interviews over the phone up until this point. But this was the first in person that I was meeting him. And before he even asked a single question or launched into anything, he started by saying, I just want to let you know that my number one priority is to earn your trust.
Oof.
Yeah. And he paused for a moment, and it like still gives me chills to this day because it was so authentic the way that he said it. And I had never experienced something like that before, even with all the great leadership we had in Southwestern.
Yeah.
It just was so like poignant to me and incredible that a leader would start with that. And then he went into, so tell me more about you. And he really just asked a lot of questions about my family. And I'm sure it was all intentional. I'm sure he had like a game plan.
Yeah.
But it was really smart because he learned what was truly important to me. And he learned my emotional, not triggers, like emotional connection, like the things that could move me emotionally. So by asking me about like my upbringing and my family and just asking me about myself, he came to learn that like my mom was like, one of my biggest motivators. And so he was able to leverage that as my leader when trying to like help push me or motivate me in a positive way. Like it was never manipulative, but it just was so smart because he started with the trust thing and then just wanted to like learn about me and learn so much about me that he was able to actually lead me well. And so, when I'm coaching leaders, I share that with them when they're interviewing, that whole, I just want to earn your trust. And it blows people's minds, but it's so powerful if it's authentic.
Yeah. I mean, wow. Just some thoughts on this. And then I have a follow-up question for you.
Okay.
Just the power of transparency, right, is, I think, undervalued. And I think that's something, we can talk about this later, I guess, too, but there's some part of that Southwestern doesn't do well when you're in books, where it's like, there's like you miss that somewhere. But when someone is just so flat out, there's a guy in Austin, actually, his name is Chandler Bolt. He runs this company called SPS, Self-Publishing School, or now it's called Self-Publishing, but that's actually how I was able to publish my book.
Amazing.
And thank you. And when I was working with the company, I mean, I had seen some great leadership working at Southwestern and working at some other companies, but this guy was just so, I mean, we would have meetings and I was like the most new person in the room. We had a Zoom meeting and he like shares like the financials and he's like, here's what we're going to do. And here's what we're going to grow. And this is why. And I'm seeing to the junior person on the team, right, where and how the money's moving. And it was such a bold move to be that transparent that I'm like, I will follow you until you let me follow you, because there's something powerful when someone's like, this is it. Like my intentions are this, and I am it's kind of similar. It's the opposite of the feeling of when you talk to someone in Southwestern and they want to establish rapport first for the first 30 minutes because they're just following a sales talk. You know what I'm talking about? And you're like, dude, just get to the close. What do you need? Or just start with like, I'm calling you. So when I call book people specifically, and in fact, I think when I called you to be on the show, I was like, hey, I'm calling you because Will told me to call you and I want you to be on our podcast. But here's what, like, straight up, what do you need?
Straight to the point.
That transparency is so powerful that it just, in the world, it's so unique in the world that when someone drops it just flat in its face with confidence and authenticity, which is the key, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, you're disarmed immediately. Because
you're drawn to them. Like you said, I'll follow you. That's how I was about Steve. It was like, I will work for this man for ever. I didn't, but
right. Give to get, though, right? They give transparency, so you get transparency from the other person, and it just cuts the bullshit, right? So you just get to the point. So cool.
It was very
question
cool.
for you.
Yes.
Question for you. You mentioned your mom and how she was a very important motivator. How come? Like, where did that come from?
Oh,
can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think.
Or is that a story for Bisler? It's up to you.
No, we could share that. My mom. So my parents divorced when I was very young. I was like 1.5, and so my mom was a single mom for a while. She didn't remarry until I was 5. My dad remarried immediately, and I still like had my dad. We would do like weekends with my dad. So it's not like my dad was like totally out of the picture, but it was like my mom had primary custody. I spent most of the time with my mom, and even when we spent time with my dad, he worked out of the country most of the time. And so even the day or like the weekends or weeks or whatever at my dad's, it actually was mostly with my stepmom and her daughter. So I was just who I'm really, really close to. So I just, it was like my older sister and me and my mom until I was like 5. So I think that's probably part of it, is just, having that experience of being raised by a single mom to an extent. And then I just really, I don't know. I just really I still do look up to my mom. She was an educator for almost 40 years. She's brilliant. She has a master. I think she has a PhD, maybe. I don't even know. But she taught special education for almost 40 years, which is like, if you can do that, you're a saint, Yeah. And middle school. So special ed and the age where everyone's hormones are kicking in.
Lord have mercy. Those are the
Yeah.
bravest humans on earth.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But I think my mom was never the mom that was like your friend. I had those friends and I thought that their moms were cooler when I was growing up. Like, why can't my mom be like so-and-so's mom? Because she's really cool and she lets us party. So my mom was never the friend. She was always the parent. That was very clear. But she was very, I don't know, she kind of let us find our own path and make our own way. And she had her, she was very strong in her faith, but that's a path she found on her own. She didn't grow up in like the church or anything like that. And so she never imposed things on us. It was always about us kind of finding things for ourselves. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Because it tells a lot about, like, makes sense from the standpoint of strength, that you witness someone at a very young age be strong, and it just changes how you decide to look at the world much later in your life.
Yeah.
It helps.
Well, very strong. And my mom had several different types of like cancer that she beat several times, but she was never like, we never did like cancer walks. Like she was never the person that was like, let's shine light on this. It was like, yeah, I had cancer and I got past it. Let's move on. Like, that's my mom. Yeah.
Your mom gets cancer, you feel bad for cancer. That's
yeah.
Like, God, she's a badass. No wonder.
She never made things a big deal, ever. So it was like, oh yeah, this is just another blip and we'll get through it and then on to the next.
But that's got to help along the way of your life. I mean, just that mentality. Like, I'd relate. My dad was the same way, or my parents really both. But when we moved here, I kind of told you a little bit about it before we recorded, and it's just like just watching them go through that difficult time and saying, you know what, this is the way you just take it.
Yeah.
Like, you got punched, like, good, take it. It's a black eye. Some people look good with black eyes. Just keep moving. Like, just keep going.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it can also have its downsides, right? Because it can be like almost avoiding really working through things, which of course that's where therapy comes into play, Yeah. It's like, rather than working through things, there's that, well, just find the strength and move on, which isn't always healthy. So there's a balance. Yeah.
There's a little bit of that in Southwestern too. We talked about this on the air.
There's a lot of bit of that in Southwestern.
It's so much positivity.
It's toxic positivity.
Yeah. And I've told this story on the air before with when I recruited my brother, who's now a DSL in the company. But one of the things I told him, Danny, I don't know if you know Danny, but
duh. Yeah, I've heard Asia. Danny's name. I should have put that together. Yes.
Yeah, he's my brother. But when I was training him in Asia, then they were just on the show a little bit ago, but I would say to them, hey, they're going to tell you to say like liquid sunshine, and it's not, it's every happy, healthy, which is great. And to some extent, but sometimes it's okay to not be okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be like, so when I was teaching them self-talk, I would say, hey, don't say this bullshit. Like, if it's raining, don't say it's liquid sunshine. Don't say that. You don't believe that. Your brain doesn't believe that. So you're going to be more resentful towards working in the rain. Then you're actually going to have a really bad attitude and working there. Instead, do this. Instead, go, it sucks to work in the rain. And, immediately they were like, oh, but that's puking. Immediately they were like, oh no. But I go, no, it sucks. It sucks to work. But here's the deal. When it's raining and I'm knocking on doors, I say, yeah, it sucks to work in the rain. But I'm a tough son of a bitch. It doesn't matter if it's raining or if it's hot or if it's cold. I said I was going to knock on the doors. And I said I was going to keep going until the end of the day. And I'm a man of my word. And so as I'm knocking in the rain, I'm like reinforcing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but if you say anything kind of negative in that culture that of toxic positivity, all of a sudden these like emotions and stuff gets like just shoved down.
Yeah.
And people aren't all 18-year-olds, most 18-year-olds are not well equipped to handle that. And so then you get this like really bad. That's why there's like this rift sometimes with people who leave Southwestern.
Totally. It creates like a resentment because it's like I think some people take it as really being inauthentic and then not hearing or seeing their experience, right? It's almost like ignoring somebody's lived experience if they're not allowed to actually be real. And I think it serves a purpose in a 12-week summer, right? Like, it's a 12-week summer. kids are 19, 20 years old. It makes sense to indoctrinate them with positivity for this crazy, insane, really hard 12 weeks. I think where a lot of us, struggled maybe later on in life or something is we never learned to then like leave it on the book field. It became a way of life, which to some point I'm sure has served a lot of us. Like I know it's definitely served me. And I had some of that growing up anyway. Like my parents played Zig Ziglar cassette tapes when I was a kid.
Advanced sales before it was cool.
Yes. So, but I think we're in an era now, like therapy is becoming more acceptable to, for people to do and talk about. And so I think we are in an era where people recognize there's a time and a place for all of the emotions and they all serve a purpose, not just the quote unquote positive ones.
Yes.
The negative, what we label as negative ones, like they're just information, right? Emotions are just information. And it's actually not healthy to pretend they don't exist.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
This is great. I thank you for discussing all this. This is what I love doing. I get paid to do this. So weird. But thank you for discussing. So
Yeah.
okay, and I'm sure we'll touch back upon this here and there as we go through. But Tom James, how the
Yes.
heck did you end up? So let's keep moving.
Oh, okay, keep moving through the story.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, Tom James, again, loved the people, loved the leadership. I really loved clothing. I still do. I have closets that are way too full. But it got to a point where, and I think they since have adjusted some things like with their pay scale and all that, but it got to a point where you had to work really hard, like work yourself really hard to not make that much money.
Right.
And so I just wasn't making enough. Like I living in LA, the cost of living was high.
Yeah,
and
West Coast is nuts.
Yeah. And I just was not making enough money. And so working at Tom James, I was going into debt. And so I was like, okay, something has to shift. Something has to change. I have to do something else. And my leader, my like direct leader within Tom James, he had actually been fired. So he was gone, but we were still in touch and still, close and all that. And he had gone to work for a client, a Tom James client, a guy who bought a bunch of suits. And this guy owned a credit card processing company, and which I knew nothing about. But as I was really figuring, okay, what do I need? I need to do something else because I'm just going further and further into debt and I'm not making enough money. I reached out to my past leader, and he said to me, he said, Dana, I'm never going to talk negatively about Tom James because I love Tom James. He had sold books and then worked at Tom James for 20 years. So that's all he knew was selling books and working at Tom James.
Whoa.
And so he said, I'm never going to, bash Tom James. I think that the people are incredible. I think the principles are great. I think that the training you get is unmatched. Like there's so many great things. So I'm never going to say anything negative about Tom James. He said, but I will tell you, I didn't know because I never worked anywhere else. He said, you can actually make a lot of money in sales. He's like, there's a lot of money you can make in sales. And it's actually really easy. He's like, you're a really good salesperson. You could make a ton of money doing other stuff. Like you could go sell anything else and make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And
it's like legit.
And it's legit.
Like a lot of industries make a lot of money.
Yes.
Compared to the amount of work.
Compared to the amount of work.
If you did that much work, you would make 10 to 11 times. If you did half as much work, you would still make twice as much. Probably.
Yes. With the background of selling books and Tom James, because the sales training at Tom James is phenomenal. Like it's a big part of why I've been successful at Southwestern Consulting is my training from Tom James. So with that background, between those two things, selling books and Tom James, by the way, if I could recruit coaches that sold books and did Tom James, that would be my ideal recruit all day long. But with those two things in my background, he was right. Like I could sell anything in any industry, anywhere, and be very successful. And it was way easier. So I went to work for him selling credit card processing. And it wasn't like glamorous. It was, I needed to make money. And it was very easy, very fast, large paychecks doing that. So that's what I moved on to.
Wild.
Yeah.
Now, on that topic, since we're on that topic, we're going to take a quick pause
Okay.
because talking about a sales jobs that pay a lot of money, we're going to hear from some of our partners here on the show, and some of these are hilarious because this is very topical right now. Both of these places are careers that you could go to, sell a shit ton of stuff, and make a lot of more money than, you know, the $8 a unit that some people get. We're just kidding. Well. So we'll be back in just a second.
Hey guys, this is Pedro Vega with Cardinal Senior Benefits. Today I'm going to talk about getting paid fast. One of the things that blew me away about this industry is that if I make some good decisions, you know, work really hard on Monday, I can see the fruits of my labor literally within 24 to 48 hours. I wake up, you form the habit of checking your checking account just to see the direct deposits come in day after day after day. And it makes you want to do it again and again and again. So, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying the show, and thank you so much for listening.
And here's a little bit from Pat Roach.
That's right, Pat Roach, same guy that popped all the balloons right before he left sales school. It's me coming back. Just wanted to promote a couple things about a career in real estate with Southwestern Real Estate. It turns out, you guys, that when people buy or sell homes, it is a highly emotional experience for them. And what they need in that process is a salesperson who can identify with their emotions and help them work through that. Turns out book people are really, really good at that skill. And that's why what we help people do is buy and sell property 99% drama free.
Guy that pops the balloons. What a guy.
I love Pat Roach.
Who doesn't? You know,
I know. He's such a good guy.
I mean, I'm not saying I want to be his wife, but she must be very happily married. Like, just such a cool guy to live with, hang out with.
I hope so. You know, sometimes people seem really cool and then their spouses say that they're not, but I do not think that's the case with Pat Roach.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's solid. That is. Now, that being said, if you guys want to hear more about those opportunities, there's a link below on the show notes, like in the episode notes description, you can click on, or just get a hold of us on Instagram. We'll get you contact for either Pedro and or Pat.
Yes.
Okay, so now back to this credit card processing sales, and I'm assuming you start making a ton of money, but then you're like, oh, but I don't like credit card processing sales. Is that how did it happen?
Twofold. So with that, with credit card processing, the companies at least that I worked with, you had to not move, but I was in a different city every 2 weeks. So I would fly to a city, work. It was mostly like mom and pop type of businesses, like independently owned businesses. So I'd work a territory, you know, like a city for 2 weeks and then move on to the next one. So, yeah,
you were selling like the POS where you like would insert the card in the chip. I see.
Yep.
I see. Like
and cash advances and things like that. Anything related to that world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. But our primary like target client did, you know, $1 million to 5 million really max of revenue annually. So they were small business.
Right.
So yeah, that was actually pretty cool because, you know, while I did it, because I got to pick the cities I went to because I became a top producer really fast. Because again, with the background I had, it was very easy. So I got to pick where I wanted to go. They would give me like a list of available cities. And then I would pick them based on stuff that was like happening in that city. So I went to the Kentucky Derby. I went to, I think I went to the Super Bowl. I went to NBA All-Star Weekend again. Yeah, that was fun. I went to the presidential inauguration. So yeah, I would like time the cities based on stuff that was happening. And then one of my girlfriends, she traveled a lot for work. And so we would coordinate. So I would give the list to her and be like, where do you want to go? And she picked Anchorage, Alaska for one of them. That was actually really cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How fun. What was the coolest place that you went to? Or like or maybe one that took you by surprise where you're like Jackson, Mississippi. And it's like, it's the coolest place. or something like that?
Where was the coolest? I mean, Anchorage and Alaska in general was pretty cool. And I would have never picked that for myself. Like, I'm not a camping type person. I like hikes, but I'm not really the type of person that you would probably like throw in the woods. I've actually gotten lost in the woods. I got lost in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. That's a whole other story. There were bears involved. But so Alaska would not have been my first choice, but I'm like, why not? It's a paid, they paid for my travel. So I'm like, sure. And that was pretty cool. Anchorage was a cool town. And we took a couple days and drove to near like Denali National Forest and took like a little tiny airplane and flew over Denali National Forest and landed on a glacier at the base of Mount McKinley. That was cool.
Wow.
And then we drove to Fairbanks area, and there's like hot springs and an ice museum. So all of that was neat. But Kentucky Derby was really cool too. I mean, inauguration was epic. That's like,
that was 2016 or
that
2012?
was 2012.
So
yeah.
Again.
Yeah, the second Obama term.
Whoa, what a trip.
It was insane. And I had friends that were going also. So it was like a bunch of us met up. And that was really cool. Like, we went to Pharrell's inauguration party. That was fun.
Cool.
And I had friends that worked in the Obama White House. So we got like, perks.
Did you go in the White House?
No? I did go in the White House. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it as big or as small as they say?
I mean, it's pretty big. You can't, like, as a, normal little peon like myself, you can't go in all the areas of the White House.
Sure.
But
I, mean, I guess, is it more like Kevin Hart size or more LL Cool J?
It's definitely more LL size. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's Obama size, at least.
It's Obama size. It's pretty big. And then, yeah, the Kentucky Derby was very cool. You know what? I loved New Orleans.
Yeah.
Baton Rouge, surprisingly. Maybe Baton Rouge was the most surprising. It just was cool. It has a lot of history and a lot of like culture. Yeah.
NOLA. I've only been to NOLA. I've never been to Baton Rouge, but NOLA was surprising. Whereas, like, you hear Louisiana as this, like, I'm my own cousin or whatever.
Right.
And then you get down there and it's like, this is a cool town.
Really cool town. I mean, it's filthy and disgusting.
It's like gross Vegas, but in a fun way.
Yeah, but it's so the food and the music in New Orleans. Oh my gosh. And the people.
Crawfish boils, yeah. You walk around, was it Bourbon Street or I think it's Bourbon Street. You walk around Bourbon Street, you got like your drink in your hand.
Yep.
There's parades going on. It's
yep.
Like, what's happening right
Amazing.
now? It's cool on a Tuesday.
It's so unique. And then all the buildings, like all the like French inspired, whatever era those are, buildings. So yeah, I really loved New Orleans. And then I met, so I'm by myself because I'm traveling for work. So everywhere I'd go to restaurants and eat by myself because that's what you do when you travel by yourself for work. And so I met really cool people too. Like, I met waiters at this restaurant in the, what is it called? The French district? No, what is that? I think it's the Latin Quarter.
It might be the
French Quarter. French Quarter. Yeah. Latin Quarter is Paris. The French Quarter. I went to this restaurant and it had the most amazing gumbo I've ever had in my life. And I started talking to one of the servers. And I was like, you need to write a book. And all the other servers were like, I know, we keep telling him. He had these crazy stories from Hurricane Katrina. Crazy stories from Hurricane Katrina.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Cool. You got to travel, you kind of made more money.
Yeah. And then it got old.
How long were you there for? Yeah, I was gonna say it probably gets old quick because you're like, oh.
It does. It gets old quick. So I was there for I worked with that first company for maybe a year-ish. And then it got old and I'm like, okay, I can't stay on the road like this. And so my manager, the one that had been with me at Tom James, he said, let me create a role for you. I'll invent a role for you. So he created a director of training role where I moved back to LA because that's where they were headquartered and worked out of their, home office. And I taught everybody's sales training. So I taught all the new salespeople, like a sales cycle and closing techniques and all these things.
ABC.
Yeah.
Establish rapport.
Exactly. So I was like, here's the first step of the sales cycle. And then here's the second. And the most important part is where you find need,
Yeah.
So I did that. And I actually really enjoyed that. I enjoyed like teaching, people how to sell, but that also got old for me because it was the first time since a job I had in college where I was a salaried employee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is not me. I'm a
Can't do it.
commission girl. Yeah. So I did that for about a year. And then I'm like, I need to be back out selling. So I went back into a sales role, but with a different credit card processing company because my manager had then left and gone to another company. And he's like, just come work for me. You can do whatever you want. I was like, okay. And at that point is when I started looking for other things. So I'm like, okay, I know I don't want to do this forever. I'm making good money, but this is not like inspiring. Nobody likes their credit card processor.
It's true.
So it was like you're the favorite, but of somebody's least favorite type of thing. It wasn't.
It's like being an accountant. Nothing wrong with being an accountant, but it's like if I only have to see you in April, and then never again till April.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, yeah, right. Like I love that all the tax loopholes so you can save me money, but I also don't love that I have to write these huge checks to the IRS.
Yeah.
So, so then that's when I started putting my feelers out and reached out to the career services department at Southwestern. So I remembered like, oh, wait, they said that if you're an alumni, you can always use their career services. They're like staffing or whatever. Yeah. So I reached back out to them and I spoke to Hans Schlegel.
Love Hans.
I love Hans.
He needs to do this podcast.
He does.
I've tried. I'm going to publicly call him out. I've tried, Hans, to get you on here multiple times. I'm going to pressure you publicly now. This is a peer pressure mode.
I'll tell Hans. I'll tell him as soon as we get off that he needs to do the podcast. Okay.
Good.
We'll peer pressure him together.
I'm seeing him next Monday for lunch, and I'm going to be like, bro.
Oh, perfect. Up? Okay. We'll tell him.
Great.
Hey, I just had Dana on. Now it's your turn.
Okay, I will. So you talking to Hans.
So I spoke to Hans. Yeah. And he, he did the Hans is very good at what he does. And he did his little deal and asked me the questions that he should have asked and was just, what do you like to do? What are you really good at? That like Venn diagram of like, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What does the world need? That thing. And I was like, well, I have to have sales. Like I need to be in a sales role because I love sales. I love like the art of the sale. And I love, the challenge of the sale. And I really love like meeting new people. Like I think people are so fascinating. That's the number one thing I love about sales is you get to learn about somebody and ask questions and get curious. And I want commission. I do not want to be in like a salaried job. I told him, I was like, but I really do love, like, I really loved the role where I was like teaching people sales. So I don't know, something where I'm like a teacher, but also I'm able to also sell. And he's like, you need to talk to Southwestern Consulting. And I immediately said no. Immediately no. And he, was asking questions like, well, what's up? Why not? And I said, Hans, no offense, but I have at this point in my life worked for 2 Spencer Hayes affiliated companies, Books and Tom James. No offense. I learned a lot. I love the people. I really appreciate everything I gained from it, but you don't make any money in those businesses. And he's like, no, trust me. You just trust me on this. And I said, no. But he planted the seed. So, and again, I grew up on Zig Ziglar. So he planted this seed that kind of like was, I guess planted all the way since I was a kid. Where I'm like, that's an interesting field, like the field of personal development and like speaking and coaching, training, writing books, things like that. And I had been a writer forever. Like I wrote music. That's when that period of time in college, I wrote and sang. So I was like, I do want to write things, and this is really interesting. So I started researching like what it would take to be a much, much smaller version of the female Tony Robbins. It's like, I want to be that, but smaller hands,
Kevin Hart sized.
smaller teeth, Kevin Hart sized. And just the more I researched like what it would actually take to build a company like that, I realized pretty quickly in any business, but definitely one like that, you pretty quickly get to a place of capacity where then you have to scale, right? Like there's only so many clients you can serve in 24 hours. And then, so then I agreed to speak to Dustin Hillis, who was founded Southwestern Consulting. And first I spoke to his wife. So Kaya Hillis now was my co-OL selling books.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah. So I knew Kaya. And so I reached out to her actually. I was like, okay, what's the real deal? Like, tell me what's actually real.
Give me the transparency.
Yes, because if you know Kaya is not going to sugarcoat. She's not going to lie. She's not going to BS you at all. She's going to tell you the truth in the most loving way possible because she's a gem. But and she was like, no, it's legit. Like, I know, I hear you. I hear your experience that you had. This actually is legit. Just talk to Dustin. So anyway, I started having conversations with him, and I realized it took a while. So we started having conversations in October of 2013. And then that's when I started going to my research mode of, okay, how could I build this by myself? And he did a very good job of like dripping on me and staying in touch. So kudos, follow up and stay in touch. And every so often it would be like, hey, let's get back together. Like, when are you in Nashville next? He did a very good job of that. But I soon realized like this scaled business model in the personal development space that I would have to build at some point, Southwestern Consulting had already built. So it was like, okay, I can go build this on my own, or I can just plug into a model that's literally already built. And so it took until May of the following year. And then at this point, I was back in the field for credit card processing. So I was in different cities every 2 weeks, but I knew it was temporary. It was just like, okay, let me just stack up a bunch of money for whatever I'm going to do next. And I scheduled one of my, where you go to a different city. I scheduled one to Nashville, and I called them up and I said, hey, let's grab dinner. I'm going to be in Nashville. And I remember they took me to this very nice place. I remember exactly. It was like squid ink pasta. And I said, okay, I will come work with you. So I gave him a yes. But I will come work with you when the start of your next campaign is. Like the way Southwestern Consulting works is it breaks the year into these 2 6-month chunks. And at that time they were from October to March and then April through September. So I said, I'm going to come work with you, but not until October. And he said, okay. And then he just stayed in very close contact, had me slowly start like my paperwork and my application process and all of that. Because he told me later, and he would tell people all the time, he's like, yeah, typically when people say they're going to start with you in 6 months, they actually don't, but I did.
It's like a week order.
Exactly. I was the weakest of weak orders. Yeah.
You paid Mrs. Jones to buy it. It was like, not even a zero down.
I was a tough cookie to crack. And he probably had to go over the pay plan with me like 17 times. I don't even, like, he had to go over it with me a lot for me to really grasp it and believe it. I just didn't believe it because, again, like I had worked at Spencer Hayes affiliated companies and I learned a lot and they were great. I was never the person that made a bunch of money doing those things. Like I hit like President's Club at Tom James, and which was like their first benchmark of a level, and I had weeks in different summers where I hit President's Club selling books. I hit More Ugly once, but I never was like, my first summer was my best summer. And so I was never a 10,000 unit producer. I was never one of those people that was one of the top people at either one of those companies. And so I just thought they're great, but you just don't make money doing those things. So yeah, it took a lot of convincing.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, this is the right fit for me. And this is what I'm really feel like I'm really good at and what I'm called to do and should be doing. And this is like where I'm supposed to be. And you can make a lot of money selling coaching. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's really sweet. So now 10 years later and you're crushing it. I mean, it's just Will had mentioned a little bit that you're like really one of the top, and I'll brag for you the way Will brags because from what I've picked up of knowing you, you're a very humble person. So
Well, thank you.
the way that Will put it was you're one of the top dogs in the company. You're senior partner or something like or
Not
like
quite.
you're up there. You're about to be.
I'm a
or
partner.
something.
Yeah, I missed
Which is a
senior
big
partner
deal.
by a little smidge. Yeah.
Hey, it's okay. But
Yeah.
But to be there 10 years and to have like the way I've heard even working at Consult, because I know Yvette, we've had Omar on here, we've had Will on here,
Yep.
right? There's really quality. I mean, it just seems to be that something about growing within that company sharpens the sharpest of people. And
Totally.
it's really fun to watch
Yeah.
or to talk to.
It's cool. I mean, I've described it to people as like, now don't get me wrong, kind of like we were talking about with Southwestern, not everything is rainbows and sunshine, you know,
Sure.
but the type of people that this role attracts it's like you're working with a bunch of motivational speakers all day long. So everyone's like really encouraging, and there's of course drama. There's drama in any company, but it's not really like compared to the clients we coach, we are stellar. Yeah, because the clients we coach are dysfunctional. Like their companies need lots of help most of the time. Except for my clients, if you're listening, you all are amazing and you need no help. But yeah,
just guidance.
Just guidance.
just guidance.
So yeah, I personally have done well. The different levels, like getting to senior partner, requires a team revenue component, that's the piece that I've missed. But yeah, personal production, I've done really well. But I think it's when you're doing something that you feel like you're actually good at, I don't know. I feel like you're just more motivated to actually go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just easier to be motivated, I think.
Yeah.
We were just having this conversation. I think it was actually with Pat Roach and Alicia Huck. I don't know if you know Alicia.
I know the name.
Really cool.
Okay.
Really spunky, really badass. She kind of does what you do, but she does consulting for like fast growing companies. So there's like a specific niche within even that role that she's like really after. Anyway, we were just having a conversation of it was like, how did you know that this was your thing? So for Pat, it was real estate. For me, it was this business and podcasting. And for her, it was coaching. And we, one of the conclusions we came to was, you always hear people, like when we were selling books, you would always hear people say like, oh, the obstacles aren't obstacles, are just, problems you eat for breakfast. And sometimes you're like, no, but this is actually a problem. Like, but when you're into the right role, or when you're at least at the time that you're at, when you're doing the right thing, or one of the signs that you're doing the right thing is that it's so easy to see things as challenges instead of problems. There's been problems that have come up growing this show. There's still problems every day that I'm working on, right?
Yeah.
But when I wake up in the morning, I see them, I'm like, oh, I know not only is it very clear how to solve it, and it's clear. I mean, it's not easy. I'm like, I see what I need to do to solve this.
Right.
But I can see that it's up to me, and then I know that I can do it. And I've never really felt that way about anything else other than comedy, where it's like a job or something I'm doing, or a role or a sales role where I'm like, oh, I can't see my way around this. That's happened before. But with this, every time it's been a challenge, I'm like, I see my way around this pretty easily. And to me, that's a green flag that I'm like right where I'm supposed to be for now. Anyway, there might be a time where something happens and I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this. And then that maybe that means I got to move.
That's a really good way to think about it and put it. I like that a lot, because what you're describing, feeling like I can't see a way out of this, that's how I felt at the end of Tom James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And it was like when you're visceral, like,
yeah. And like and this is why I can't believe we're saying this again in like within 2 or 3 episodes, but this is why I don't like Tony Robbins. because Tony Robbins is like a round peg, but most people are square holes. Some people that go and pay for Tony Robbins are round holes. And so it's like you went to the conference, you paid the boku of dollars that you have to pay to go to this thing. You learned it, it impacted you, you changed the world, or you changed your world. Amazing. Bravo. But then the other 19,900 people that were at that arena that paid the same ticket went home and nothing changed.
Yes.
If his stuff was so good and he's selling out arenas of this stuff, after a couple of years, it would be a noticeable impact on society from the thousands of people that you've helped. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yes and no. So
okay.
I'll give you your challenge. Do you want to continue?
Sure.
You want to finish?
Yes, for the love of so my point is like some people it's going to help, and some people you know right when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So some people go and they're not ready to listen to what they were. You know, it's the same thing as when you're coaching your first year and then the other manager says almost the exact same thing you said, but for some reason when they said it, it stuck. I get that too. But what my point is, like, there's a point where you get to where it's like no motivational speaker is going to help you. No amount of coaching is going to help you. You just have to decide that this is not for you. And it's okay, because eventually you'll bump into the thing. Like for me, it was podcasting where, again, resistance has been met. But in the whole time, I'm just like, I can do this. No doubt. And there's times when I sell books and I'm like, I can't do this. And it's okay, you know. Anyway, wait, challenge. This is
well
fun.
Before I challenge, because you brought up another thing, it was interesting because again, leaving Tom James was a really hard decision for me because it felt like I was quitting, like that mentality that we got on the book field, like you can't quit, never quit, you're not a quitter.
You went back to the HQ or whatever.
And I remember I reached out to my student manager, Ruthie Googans, now Ruthie Taylor, and she said to me, she said, Dana, you know, I know what we learned selling books, but I just want to let you know, it's okay to quit things. Yeah. And that was I needed that so bad. Like the permission that it's okay to move on from something when this thing no longer serves you.
100%.
But yeah, I think, part of it too is having a bigger mission. Like I have found myself even here at Southwestern Consulting, like when I've had seasons of not performing as well, which so far this year has been like my lowest performance ever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I recognize what it was. It's because I got hyper focused. I was really close to hitting senior partner last year, which is the highest rank or whatever that you can get at Southwestern Consulting. And nobody else has even accomplished that since in like the last 7 or 8 years. So there's been nobody else to do it. I got so focused on that. I got way too focused on the result and like this revenue number and metric. And that has never worked for me. Like I know that motivates some people. It doesn't motivate me. It actually demotivates me. It kind of stifles me and squashes my confidence. And so when I'm focused on the mission or focused on like the purpose, the underlying reason I'm here, and this is with anything, but this is why I think I've done well in this career, is I've been so convicted in the purpose of really helping people and finding the people that want this type of help and need this type of help and have their lives changed. Because we have so many clients that have told us we changed their life or we saved their life. Or like I had a client early on, I was just teaching her a simple, like how to ask better questions, you know, simple sales technique. And she came on our call, like the next call, so emotional. And she's like, the stuff you were teaching me about asking questions and listening, I took it home. And she's like, you saved my marriage. And I was like, oh,
whoa.
Right. And so
that's amazing.
Yes, it's amazing.
But the thing is with consulting, there's like, it's like tailored, Tony. It's tailored good coaching. Do you know what I'm saying? Like what you get to sit down and you get to listen to someone's problems and you give them advice and you give them coaching based on experience that you've pulled personally or that you've seen across different, avenues and stuff. And that's huge. That kind of coaching, I think everybody needs that kind of coaching in general.
It's very customized to the individual. So, so that for me, that's part of why I've done well is I've historically been really focused on just the purpose, the reason I'm here, the mission, the people. And then I'm a big control the controllables person. You know, I was a college athlete. I'm very like, I can be very disciplined, you know, like I'm really big on routines. So if I know just what I have to do and you tell me just go do this and eventually the results are going to come, and as long as I focus on what I can control and I focus on the doing, that has served me very well. And so, yeah, I've done really well here because I've mostly been focused on the mission, the purpose, and controlling what I can control. This last season where I shifted my focus to the wrong thing, I can see the impact that has had on just like my enjoyment of what I'm doing and the results. So that's been a lot of like self-reflection in the last month or so.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're speaking to my Kevin Hart when you say control the controllables. It's just like, just really, I know what you mean. It's just let it go. You know, you can't, it's hard for people to do that, but if you could just get through that barrier of like that, that's something I have.
It's easier said than done, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that.
Challenging. I'll go back to challenging you.
Oh yeah. The challenge.
So I joke about this actually when I'm presenting to groups where I explain like Tony Robbins. I actually really respect Tony Robbins. I was not a Tony Robbins fan until I watched his documentary. Have you seen his documentary?
No. Oh no, I'm gonna change my mind.
You might change your mind. He's still not my favorite because I'm not like a big fan of like the loud like, but I really respect him now. And I saw him in a different light after watching that documentary. Anyway, I respect what he does. I respect what he's built. I like him more in one-on-one interviews than like the big pomp and circumstance, extravagant stuff that he does personally. But I think like you were saying, if he was so good, then it would have this lasting impact. That's actually always my argument for coaching. So what I always say is like, Tony Robbins is great, but you only get so much out of attending a seminar or a training or a motivational speech. Like if I said the whole reason Tony Robbins stays in business is because that doesn't last long. That's why he's able to stay in business.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Exactly right.
So that's where I'm always like, that's why you need a coach, because a coach is there to actually help you change your habits and change behavior and take all that great motivation that you got and actually find ways to implement it into your everyday life.
Yeah. Put action to it. Put action to the knowledge. And again, and I'm not saying that what he's saying isn't valuable or what he's saying isn't worthy of listening to. I'm sure he has some really amazing speeches and I do respect from the standpoint of I respect what he's saying, but one of two things has to be right. Either you're making so much money at this point, bro, like that you should do it for free. I don't know why you're charging. Someone invited me to a Tony Robbins event like last year, and it was like $600 for like the nosebleed seats at the arena. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's more than the Lakers Warriors game. You know what I'm saying? Like that shouldn't be for Tony Robbins. He ain't that funny. I'd pay for a comic before I'd pay for Kevin Hart before I do that, you know? And at least I'm gonna laugh. But my point is, so you should either stop charging so much. I get you got to make your money, but at this point, man, you've made enough money that you could afford to do this, or at least some of the easier stuff a lot cheaper. Because now it's a cash cow for you, and I get it.
Oh yeah, he makes so much money.
But it's like if it's $600 for nosebleeds worth of material that you're going to give me, I should have like some sort of something to show for it. But of the 20,000 people that filled that arena.
Yeah.
You know, how many of them are changing their like 10, which is great for those 10.
Right. Most people are not actually changing their life. I wonder though, because Tony Robbins is a smart guy, I wonder how much of the cost is like rooted in psychology, right? The principle of like, the more invested you are into something, the more value you think it has.
Yeah. It's kind of like,
I bet you that's why he does it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, so we produce podcasts for people. By the way, if you're listening, you want to start a podcast, you know. But when I was doing this, I was actually talking to Alicia, and I was like, "How much would I charge for this?" She goes, "Well, you calculate your hour, your time, and blah blah blah. That's basic stuff." But then she goes, and then you go above that, because if you say you're helping someone start a podcasting business for $50 a month, that's too low. Like you're going to go, it's like if a Ferrari is being sold for $500, you don't think that's a cheap Ferrari. You think
there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you also don't charge $1 million because then there's no market. So then, so there's like a sweet spot. So there is something to that.
Yes, there is something to it. Yes.
touche.
When
I
it
just
comes to
don't- I
what
don't
you're
know.
doing in your business, though, you do also have to take into consideration. So now this is me as the coach helping you.
Oh, yes.
This was
More
a
and
lesson that I learned, which was you will never be comfortable charging something that you're not willing to actually pay to invest in yourself.
more.
And meaning, and kind of the flip side of that is like, don't undercharge for yourself and your expertise. Like, people will pay what you are worth. Right. So if
Yep.
somebody out there is charging whatever it is, $200, $250, $500 a month to help people launch a podcast, if somebody's charging that, then somebody's paying that. So you may not charge that, but yeah, you don't want to undercharge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I think about it, because you want to know how this ended up happening, Coach, is it's actually Will sent me one of his clients who wants to start a podcast, and he sent it, and I'm like, sure, I'll talk to the guy. And again, this is also a little bit about imposter syndrome. We've talked about this too, where it's like, am I worthy of even being able to charge this much? Like, do I know enough about podcasting that I have the nerve to charge whatever I'm charging, right? So anyway, so this guy, this is now the third or fourth of these kinds of conversations that I'm having with this guy, and he's asking me questions that to me seem basic, but to him are like mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and after the hour's up, he goes, all right, cool, what do I owe you? And I was like, huh? He goes, yeah, like, you know. And he goes, you don't charge for this? I go, no. He goes, dude, this is good stuff, you should charge for this. And then that sparked the idea, because then I talked to Will about it, and he goes, dude, yeah, I've watched you since the beginning grind out a way to make money out of this thing, and you're doing a good job. You've created something for yourself that's unique. You should charge for that. That's worth. And Will was the one that inspired me to be like, you should definitely start that business, because it's worth it. So there's like
a guy went to high school, does that, and he makes a lot of money. He teaches like podcasty stuff. Now he's like super well known, like podcast teacher person. Pat Flynn. If you ever see Pat Flynn.
You know Pat Flynn?
Yeah, we went to high school together.
Oh, well, tell him I said hi.
Okay.
I'd rather have Pat Flynn than Hans Schlegel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's legit.
Just, you know, yeah, he's great. Pat's amazing.
Yeah, I know. He's amazing. And it's really fun to watch because we literally grew up together.
Yeah, Pat's fun. Pat's a cool dude.
And I didn't even realize he was really doing all that. I mean, I guess I kind of knew in passing from like, you know, people connected on social media or whatever. But my boyfriend was starting a podcast, and he like pulled up all this like Pat Flynn stuff. And I was like, why are you watching Pat Flynn? He's like, because he's like the podcast expert. I was like, what?
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty smart. He's like, yeah, his basic entry level stuff is great for anybody who's starting out. I always refer to them to him to those videos, because I'm like, I don't have time to go over this basic stuff. So we're talking about like monetizing and moving. Anyway, we completely derailed here.
We derailed.
So sorry. This is great. No, but this is the lovely part about meetings. So like, I've never met you before, and I think I had a 15-minute conversation with you, and now that's the shared trauma of Southwestern.
It's
leads
true.
To solid connection. That's
trauma bonding.
That's it.
Yeah.
I did have a question for you before we go into some Southwestern stuff.
Yes.
And so this might be more like a list of 4 or 5 things, but of do's and don'ts. So you coach a lot of businesses. You kind of mentioned that a lot of businesses have real issues that when you know, when they first come to you, you're like, oh, mother of God, where do we begin? Right.
Yes.
What are some common things that small business owners, man, there's people listening who for sure run business. So let's say, do this to avoid chaos, or don't do this so you can avoid chaos. Maybe do like a list of 3 of each or something like that. If you don't.
Oh
mind.
man. Okay. So I think one of the most common themes is not hiring soon enough. And on the flip side, hiring too fast. So what I mean by that is, especially when it's like a support staff person or like an assistant. So a lot of people will not make the investment into an assistant soon enough because they don't feel like they can afford it. And it's one of those things where you really have to hire help at that tipping point where you can't afford them yet. But by hiring them, it's going to free up so much time for you to do what you should be doing that they are worth their salary or whatever you're paying them. So I see a lot of people that do not hire assistants or like staff or, you know, that type of role soon enough. Because again, they don't think they can afford it. And it's really, you can't afford not to. And then on the other side of that, when I say hiring too quickly, when people are looking to hire staff, a lot of times they don't know how to vet properly. So they don't know how to take the time needed and ask the right questions and have people go through the right experiences or the right, like homework assignments, things like that. They don't vet enough. And so we see a lot of clients who make bad hires, and a bad hire is often even more costly than not hiring at all. So those ones are pretty big.
Ooh, good stuff. How do you, man, I'm at that spot right now, actually. I'm at that spot where it's like, well, we have our producer. She can be here with us today, but normally there's someone in the background that's running stuff and I'm just doing the hosting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have her, she does a lot of work with us. And so I got that tipping point right at the right time.
Yep.
But now we're at the place where I probably should have hired someone because we have a bunch of ad space now that we could take, and there's a ton of alumni. So now we've structured it in a way where now it's like, now I can just go call a bunch of people and say, hey, would you be interested in talking to hundreds, if not thousands of book people every week, right?
Yeah.
So I think I should have done that like 6 months ago, or like maybe more. But
well, then you should do it now.
You're saying that. Damn it! I knew you were going to say that, and now I have to do that.
Yes. Ugh. So that is the other thing, is, which you may be alluding to, maybe not, is the whole working on the business versus working in it. So even when it comes to coaching, like the two most common objections we get when we're selling coaching are people telling us they don't have time for coaching or they don't have the money for coaching. And my response always is that then that's why you need a coach. Like if you don't think you have time to help grow your business or take time to be working on it and not just stuck in it like the hamster wheel, then that's why you need a coach, because you need a coach to help you work on the business. And if you don't feel like you can afford it and you're in a revenue generating role, right? This isn't like somebody who has a set salary necessarily, but we coach people like that too. Anyway, but if you have a role where if you are able to be more efficient, you could actually increase revenue or increase profitability or increase your income, then you can't afford not to. And if you don't think you have the money, that's actually why you need a coach, because you need a coach to help you make more money, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we always talk about coaching truly is an investment. It shouldn't be seen as a cost. It should be seen as an investment. So even like if you're coaching people on their podcast, that's how they should see it, is it's an investment into their future success. It really shouldn't be a cost as long as they actually implement what you're teaching them, right? Because they'll see a return.
Yeah. That's
so that
good.
I'm giving you free stuff here.
Look at that's good. Write that down. Can you believe some people don't listen to this podcast? Like there's like this kind of gold throughout like almost every episode on all sorts of different industries, and people like, oh yeah, you had Lee McCroskey. Yes, we've had. Come on, get it together.
I mean, come on, Dr. Rock.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, this
so
is
those
really
ones
good.
are big. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And then leaders, I personally coach a lot of C-suite and a lot of leaders. As a team, we coach mostly, people in sales, but we'll coach anybody, anywhere, any industry, but it's our niche, of course, is sales. But I personally coach a lot of C-suite, and with them, so much of what I'm coaching on is communication and emotional intelligence and problem solving, crucial conversations, understanding that not everybody is like you. Not everybody thinks like you. And then scaling. So those are probably the two biggest areas that I work on with high level, like CEOs and high level leaders, is all the EQ, emotional intelligence stuff, communication stuff, and like actually how to effectively and efficiently scale the business the right way.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book Scaling Up?
Of course.
Oh, Bible.
I've read most of the books.
I was going to say, you probably read it. I think I read that book like a couple years ago, and in my head, I was like, oh.
It's like a textbook, the way that book is written. Yeah.
Yeah. But it reads like Ogmandino. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Like, oh, that makes sense.
Vern, you are a smart man. Yeah. Vern Harnish.
Yeah.
Wow. So cool. Gosh, I could spend hours on just even this nerdy stuff about scaling. So I digest. So,
well, we can spend hours. I'll just invoice you.
Look, it's always a salesperson. I love Southwestern people. what everyone likes about the way we do business, and then the episode ends. Like, can you imagine?
I love it. Do you get your
that's so
mail
funny.
here or at the post office?
Yeah, he pulls out a green sheet, waits for answer. Speaking
Amazing.
speaking of Southwestern stuff, so let's
Good segue.
wind the clocks back. I love hearing origin stories. How the heck? So you're sitting at UCLA, mind your own damn business.
Yeah, biology
your own-
major.
trying to be a Dr. Potthoff over here.
Yep.
MD. What happened? Who talked to you about this? What happened?
You know, it's funny. I don't actually remember how I initially like gave my contact information. I must have been floated in a classroom. Like it must have been a survey because I got a phone call. Yeah, I wasn't floated on campus. So I'm sure I was sitting in one of those huge, like 300 person,
biology 101.
Yeah, some class. And filled out a little survey, right? Of like, do you have summer work plan or work lined up? No. Do you want to make money? Yeah. Put your information. So it's like, okay. Because I got a phone call. I do remember that I was in my dorm room and I got this phone call from this lovely woman named Ruthie Googans. And she was so bubbly and sweet. And she said, we're having these informational sessions, down in, I don't even remember the name of where it was, but I can picture it. And, would you like to attend to learn more, that whole spiel? And I said, oh, sure. Yeah, I'll come by and learn more. And she asked me a question that I still use to this day. I used this like 2 days ago.
I think I know what this one is. People have brought this one up. But
do you know what it is?
Do you consider yourself a reliable person?
Close. Close.
Dang it.
Yes, very close. She said, there's limited seats. Can I count on you to be there?
Oh, yes. It's the same. It's like the confirmation, right? Like,
yes.
Hey, do you consider yourself a reliable person? Can I count on you?
Can I count on you to be there? And I was like, yeah, sure. You can count on me to be there. And had she not asked me that question, I would not have shown up. That's how powerful it was. Because I remember the day of, I did not feel like walking all the way down campus from the dorms down to where they were holding info session, down through Bruin Walk all the way. I was like, I don't want to go. I didn't feel like it. And then I remember she's like, can I count on you to be there? And I was like, oh, I told her she could count on me. I told her yes.
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you.
Yeah. For me, I didn't go because Champions League was on and I watched Messi, Barcelona play Chelsea, and then Barcelona lost.
I mean, you had to watch
I'm a
that.
Barca fan. Yeah, but I'm a Barca fan, and Barcelona lost, and I'm like, this is an omen. It's because I didn't go to that meeting that that guy told me about. And so I called him, and I was like, can I go again, please?
We were so impressionable and naive.
They hit you so hard with these big ones.
I know.
They bring out all the guns out.
They really do. So
you trot your way down Bruin Walk.
So I trotted my way down Bruin Walk, past the bear, into the room, and went to the info session. And I thought it was so cool because, I'm a big student. Like I was a nerd. I mean, I was a cool nerd because I played a bunch of sports and I was involved in a bunch of extracurriculars, but I also was in like the college classes in middle school. I loved learning. I still do. That's why I
Were
love
you in
books.
band?
I was in band in middle school. I played the flute. I was in choir in high school.
I did show choir in high school, but I was a cool nerd as well.
Oh, there you go.
I was in varsity soccer team. I got along with all the jocks, but on Saturdays I'm like,
yes, I played volleyball, water
Yeah.
polo, and I swam. So I had a sport every season, but I was in 2 choirs. We didn't have a show choir because my choir director thought that was cheesy. She didn't like the hands. Yeah. But we did have like regular choir, and then we had a jazz choir. So I was in both of those. And then I was involved in like, student council, whatever things. Yeah. So I was an athlete, which, the athletes tend to be like the cool kids, or everyone thinks so. And then, but I also, was friends with all the like drama nerds because I was in choir.
Yeah. Which are cooler people, by the way.
Cooler people. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. And then I did really well in school. Like I was in, they had like these experimental courses that they did in my school where it was literally like college level curriculum starting in 6th grade. It was very cool. Like, I'm glad I was a part of it, but it was strange and unique. But I loved school, loved learning. So anyway, fast forward, they do this info session and it's all about books and education. I'm like, books and education? Those are right up my alley. I love books and education. And my mom was a teacher for almost 40 years. And so I'm like, oh, and my mom is going to love this.
Of course.
Yes.
Biggest supporter.
Oh my gosh, she's going to think it's the best thing ever. She did not. She did not. But that was the start. Yeah. And
You're
I remember.
Going where?
Oh, yeah. I remember,
don't know.
you know, I called my mom because I was so excited, right? And I'm like, I'm going to have this job. Because I hadn't really worked. I mean, I worked barely for 5 minutes at a pizza spot in high school. Like, I hadn't really worked a job. And so I'm like, oh, my mom's going to be so, you know, excited. I'm lining up this summer job and it has to do with education. She's going to be pumped. And I remember calling her and I was so excited. And it was like, one by one, a bunch of little balloons that she popped.
Pat Roach style.
Yeah. One by one by one. She was like, so what is the name of this company? I was like, I don't really remember. And what are they selling? I don't know. It's like books or something. And where are you going? I don't know. They don't really tell you that yet. And how much money is it? Well, it depends. My mom was like, absolutely not. This is a total scam. You are not doing this. This sounds crazy. So I was like, oh, maybe not. Yeah. And that was a lot of back and forth because I did an info session. It had to be like early in the year, like maybe January, February, maybe March, maybe even sooner, because I was so indecisive for months. I would still show up to stuff. So I would still show up to all the like Southwestern trainings.
Sure. The campus meetings and
yeah, leading up to the summer. But I was so on the fence because my mom, in the words of Ruthie Googans and Kaya Grady, now Ruthie Taylor and Kaya Hillis, my mom was, quote, the most neg mom they had ever met. They did a parent visit and they left the parent visit and were like, your mom is so scary. Yeah. Your mom is the scariest person we've ever met.
That's so good.
Yeah. So it literally was the week before we left where I finally made the decision. Because my mom was like, absolutely not. She's like, I'll pay you to stay home. That you can make whatever it was, 8,000, 13,000,
something like that.
8,000. She's like, I will pay you $8,000 to stay home. She lined up a summer job for me. She got me a summer job. She found me a job. She told me she was going to pay me $8,000 to stay home. She said if I was going to go in the summer that she wouldn't let me take the car because she had given me my car.
Geez.
She's like, well, you can't take the car then. She did every possible thing she could try. And then the kicker, this was the kicker. She said, if you do this, you do not have my blessing. And that was like dagger.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. That was the worst one.
Oh, no.
And then it was like a week before. And I remember Ruthie telling me, Ruthie had all these gems. She said, Dana, you just need to make a decision. It doesn't matter what your decision. I don't care what your decision is. You could be a yes, you could be a no. It does not matter. But as long as you are in this place of indecision, you can't, you're stuck. So she said, once you make a decision, you can move in the direction of the decision, whether it's yes or no. But until you make a decision, you can't move in either direction. So you just need to decide. I know, right? So good. I use that now too when I'm closing people.
That's good. Write that down. That's good. Yeah.
That's a good close. It's a very good close.
It's about, my dad always used to say, it's not about making the right choice. It's about making the choice right.
Ooh, that's good too.
And I was like, oh yeah. Oh, Dad.
Well, it's about making a choice, right? Because once you make a choice, then you figure it out.
If you figure out, you can only figure out if it's the right choice. I mean, some of them are obvious, like don't do that crystal meth, right? That's definitely.
I would hope.
Unless the world's coming to an end and it's like you can see the asteroid and you're like, could die happy, I guess. Whatever.
I
But
don't
the
know.
point,
Not even then.
yeah, I don't think so. Not ideal, but some of them are very obvious. But when it's like a tough choice like that, then it's like,
Yeah. When I was
dude, just
literally
make
going
just make
against my
it.
mom, I'd never gone against my mom. I was such a mama's girl. Like
But yeah,
I
yeah,
was the
given the
good kid
history.
growing up.
Yeah, you
I was
got the
definitely my
straight
mom's
A's.
favorite. Oh yeah, straight A's.
We had the
100%.
same upbringing. We had the same, like, well, my parents didn't divorce until later, but like we had, I mean, I was doing straight A's. I was the kid that like other kids would tell their parents, hey, we're going to this get together at the park. And they're like, no, but the Gamboas are going. Like Danny and I were the good kids. And they would say the Gamboas are going. We're the name to drop to be like, oh, then
Oh,
yeah,
okay, you can go.
because we wouldn't go to a thing that wasn't like a good choice thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like we were
Yeah.
those kids.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
I got
you're
all the
going
straight
against your
A's.
mom.
I graduated, I think, with like a 4.6
Yeah.
GPA. Yeah. And college
Check
already
out the
a
big brain
sophomore.
on Dana.
I know. And I went into school as a sophomore. It still took me 5 years to graduate, but that's because I liked school too much.
7.5, and I hated college.
Oh, I
And I
loved
full-time.
college.
It's a wholesome. I loved
Oh,
college, except
I
classes.
loved it so much. Oh, I loved classes. See, I would have stayed in college. I would have like 5 PhDs if it didn't cost money. I love
Oh, yeah.
school so I love education so much. I really want to get my MBA, but
That's
I'd rather buy a house than spend money on an MBA.
fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but
Anyway.
you chose to go. So
I chose to
were you
go.
a
So it was like
walker?
literally the week before. And I'm like wrestling with this decision. And oh my gosh. And it came down to the only thing I had ever regretted was I had been recruited to play volleyball in college to different schools. And instead I went to UCLA and played because UCLA is the best school ever. So of course I would do that. But I wasn't recruited to their
top
volleyball
five.
team because they're number one.
If you're gonna go about best volleyball team in the country,
No,
I'm
not
sorry,
best volleyball team.
Nebraska Huskers got y'all.
Oh no, yeah, no,
Although-
not the best volleyball team. But I'm saying
Most
I wasn't good
schools are.
enough for UCLA's volleyball team.
Oh, I see.
So I didn't get recruited there for volleyball. I got recruited to other schools for volleyball. But I ended up walking on and ended up doing crew at UCLA. That was my second year. Anyway, so this is freshman year. And the only thing I had regretted up to that point was not playing volleyball. And so I just had this conversation with myself where I was like, you know what? The only thing I've regretted is something I didn't do. And so if I don't do this thing, I'm always going to wonder about it. And I might regret not doing it. But one thing for sure, I'm always going to wonder what would have happened.
Oof.
And what it was about. So I have to at least try it. And it's only one summer. It's only 12 weeks. It's one summer. If I hate it, I never have to do it again. So that was the deciding factor for me.
That's really wise for someone like who. Oh, you were 19 at the time. Like, I mean, that's a good
Yeah,
head
18
on your shoulders. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super young, but
I was a young one.
And then you get to sales school, and Dan Moore starts talking about Mr. M, and you're like, oh boy.
Well, and I just again,
doing
I
6
thought sales
summers.
school was so cool. The car
Yeah.
caravan was cool. My first summer, my second summer was not cool. Second summer car caravan was a disaster.
What happened?
Oh gosh, I jinxed it. So second summer, one of the
We'll
guys.
go back to your first summer in a second, but
Okay.
like, since you're bringing this up, let's just go into it.
It was an omen of things to come. My second summer, one of the third year managers or whatever was graduating. So he was we were leaving the car caravan before graduation ceremonies. So he was going to have to stay behind and graduate, and he was going to fly out to Nashville. But he needed his car. And I was one of only 2 people that knew how to drive stick. So he had a stick shift like Toyota Tacoma or something. And so I was like, okay, I'll drive your car because I can drive stick. And then I had to let a first year drive my car.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And we're leaving
boy.
Ackerman Union, or the turnaround. We're coming out of the turnaround. We're getting ready to leave. And I said, just don't crash it.
Boy, if you know anything about summer in Southwestern.
And Arizona, he got separated from the car caravan and ended up on some side highway road with no streetlights. and hit an elk. And the elk was so big that the subsequent 18-wheeler that hit the elk had to be towed. So you can imagine what that elk did to my little Camry. Totaled the car.
It was no match.
No match. Luckily, I did have a little moon roof. So the moon, the like, what's it called? The border of the moon roof, the frame of the moon roof actually probably saved their lives. It was a guy driving and then a girl in the passenger seat because the whole entire front was completely crushed up until the moon roof. So it could have been actually very bad. They were fine, but my car's name was Chaz. Chaz was not fine. And Chaz had to be towed and totaled. Yeah.
Poor Chaz. That elk was tougher than your mom. That thing was not moving.
That thing was a tree. Those things are big.
Yeah, they're massive.
Yeah. So fast forward, by the way, to sales school, Nate used to start tearing pieces of the MUFU and chew on it. Was it sales school or Sunday meeting? I think it was sales school. He used to tear pieces out of the MUFU and start chewing on it. I don't even remember what the setting was. I don't know why he was doing this, but it was always really funny. And so he intentionally tore out E for elk and started chewing on it.
And then tore C for car to Chaz.
Yeah.
C for Chaz and car.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just the first car totaled that summer.
Oh, good. I had my first year total his car on. He totaled 2 cars. Same guy totaled 2 cars. I've told the story before. Long story short, he totaled it on the way, literally in Knoxville. So we were going to New England, so just outside of Nashville. Totals his car. We had to work to get him a new car. We got him a new car, and then totals it on a dirt road in Vermont. And and that was a whole story. And I'm like,
well, that's the whole other story of my second summer. So a first year totaled my car, and then I was like, well, I have to have a car because that was part of the deal for me coming back. Because by this point, I was on the crew team at UCLA, and so I needed to be able to do workouts. So the agreement that I would come back for a second summer was as long as I could do workouts, and I would start in the second goal period. So I would go to breakfast with my roommates, and then I would go to the gym, and I did workouts, and I started goal period number 2. So I had to have a car. Like walking wasn't an option. And we had a family friend outside of Atlanta who the son had gotten in trouble for the summer. And so his parents, took away his car for the summer. So they're like, well, he can't drive it. So if you want to drive it, you can, because he's on punishment. So after sales school, the same guy whose stick shift I drove, he drove me to Atlanta to pick up that car. And it was this like souped up Integra rice rocket with no muffler. It gave me a headache every time I drove it down the highway. Yes. And these like super thin racing wheels. And so, yep. Monday morning.
Not a book
week
car.
6. No, Monday morning, week 6. Hydroplaned off the road, flipped it in a ditch. Yeah. So someone totaled my car, and then I totaled his car.
Liquid sunshine.
Liquid sunshine.
Can be detrimental to a car.
Very. And a person. God. And a person.
And a human, yeah.
Yeah.
But not an elk. It will...
Oh, it killed the elk. Oh, yeah. It's detrimental to the elk as well. The elk was roadkill. Yeah, bad. Someone
ate it. Okay. I love book stories. So let me rewind. So you talked about... Okay. I always like asking about firsts, generally speaking. First door, first house, that kind of stuff.
Oh.
What do you remember? Yeah, these are always fun stories because people are like, you never forget those. I mean, I guess you could forget details, but generally speaking, that feeling of this is the first door.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Do you remember that?
I do.
Where'd you go to sell?
I was excited though. I sold in New Jersey.
Nice.
Yep. I was the Garden State. I was actually excited because prior to that, right, the first door really that we knocked on was to find host families. So even before, sales day. Yeah. And I thought that was fun. I found 4 host families my first day because I found one for us. And then they were like, oh, you found yours. Okay. So we're going to move you to somebody else's town to keep knocking. And then I found another one. And then they were like, oh, okay, we're going to move you to somebody else's town and find one for them. So yeah, I found 4 host families. I thought it was fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're one of those. You were one of those.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My first summer. Subsequent summers, not so much. But my first
Wow.
summer, I thought it was so fun. I was like, this is a fun adventure. For almost the entire summer, I cried one day, and my B manager that I lived with later, she told me, she's like, you were weird. Like, you
Yeah.
were weird. People
Everyone
cry.
cries.
Everyone cries. And you every day were like, okay, bye. I thought
That's
it was fun.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you
Yeah.
remember, like, so were you one of those that got off to a really fast start right away, or
No.
were you more like I ramped up and
Yeah.
ended up?
It was, slow and steady. I wasn't like selling a bunch of books out the gate, but I was just plugging along and doing my deal. And, I was a walker. I couldn't
I was
ever
gonna say you
really
walked.
master the bike. So I just mostly walked. I got a couple bikes, by asking like, hey, do you have a spare bike you don't want
Oof.
anymore? But I could never really master like figuring out how to efficiently use the bike. So I mostly walked.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
That
fine.
walkers are a special breed, man. Y'all are crazy. My brother, during his first summer, he had to walk his first couple of weeks. He lost his keys. We had to get them replaced.
Oh no.
And I mean, it's brutal. I'm like, I would be sitting there going, I should get to the next store because someone out there is just walking. And this is what am I complaining about?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Well, and I think that's what helped me. Like, I didn't even know my first summer that people got off schedule. Like, I thought if I sat on the curb too long eating my peanut butter and jelly, that was off schedule.
I mean, technically it is.
Technically, it is.
By the definition of the word,
Yes.
you're not. Yeah.
But it wasn't until like checkout, and I'm hearing stories that people like took the day and went to New York City and went to the movies. And I was like, what?
Yeah. My first summer, I was never got off schedule. I think it was like 4,000 units. I was like top first year.
Yeah, same. I was like 3,800 units.
Yeah. So, and then I found out people went to the movies. So my second summer, I stayed pretty much on schedule. Third summer, wow, I had a blast.
Yeah.
Not on the book field.
There you have it. Yeah.
Was that you too?
No, my second summer, I was actually doing really well. I was leading the org. So up until week 6 was when I flipped that car. But up until then, I was doing really well. And it was kind of like, we were talking about how it kind of proved that whole concept that you can get more done in less time, because I was working, if you added it all up, because I started a goal period late, I was basically working an entire day less than everybody else. And I was, and I was leading the org because I had less time to sell. So I had hit President's Club, I think twice already in the first 5 weeks, my second summer. I was doing pretty well. And then, it was Monday morning of week 6. I flipped that car, and I never could really get back into, well, it was 500 units when I was selling.
At the time?
At the time, 500. Yeah.
Oh.
So, but after that, I could never really get back into the groove and never got back into, so I guess then, the whole rest of the schedule, the whole rest of the summer I was off schedule, but that was because I came to find out much later when I got back to school and back to campus and finally had x-rays taken that I had fractured 3 vertebrae. So I was not functional. Man. Yeah.
I mean, woman,
I was in so much pain and I just couldn't, my host family fortunately was amazing. My second summer, incredible people. And my host mom, basically, I was like on bed rest. She basically just let me chill. And then they let me use their car to try to do my deliveries. So I was like
that's crazy,
frozen.
With a broken back, essentially.
Yeah. But I didn't know it was broken.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's gonna hurt.
I know. Yeah, it wasn't fun.
My God.
So yeah,
man,
not so great.
And so as you go through your career, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stories, so feel free to drop them as you think of them, 3rd, 4th, 5th summer. But like as you're thinking back, are there moments or highlights where you start going, hey, this was an important, like some people go, oh, this is when I almost didn't come back and I came back and I'm glad I did because of this, or this is a family I met that really taught me how to be a good, a member of society, or these people helped me find my faith. We have like so many different stories of that. As you think through like your 5 summers, what are some of those highlights as you when you reflect back on like these times?
So definitely that second summer host family. Like my host mom, I became really close. So they had a son and a daughter, and I became really close to the daughter, and she became like my little sister. And my host mom, she had really strong faith. And she basically like nursed me kind of back to health. And she really helped me mentally and emotionally because I was so frustrated that I was physically basically incapacitated. And I had never had that in my life. Like I had bad injuries from playing sports, but nothing to the extent of like, I physically can't do things that I want to be able to do. And that was so frustrating for me. And she really helped me with like, hey, maybe there's a reason that, not that this happened to you, but maybe there's something good that can come out of it. And so being kind of stuck and basically like bedridden for several weeks, she really helped me work through, you have nothing to do but sit there and think. And she helped me actually work through stuff I had never dealt with. It was almost like therapy. And she had like her dad had died in Vietnam. And so she was sharing with me how she held on to so much for so long, having to do with her dad. And it took her a long time to actually work through the loss of her dad. And so that summer was a summer that I really came face to face and dealt with resentment that I didn't even know that I had toward my dad for him not really being in my life. Yeah. It was very powerful. It was life-changing. It was a life-changing where I faced it, dealt with it, realized it, and forgave him.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that the ultimate conclusion, or was there a part after forgiveness that you found bliss with, or was that forgiveness really the bottleneck that was keeping you from like full potential, I guess,
Yeah.
or
I think that
I don't know what
was
the word is there,
a
but-
big part of even like really letting him into my life. And I always kind of had these guards up, and there's still stuff in the years since where it's like, I feel like we all have dysfunction in our families. But that was a big turning point for me. I think it was more so recognizing, I had this realization. I think that our parents are flawed people. And up until that point, it was like, yeah, right. It was like,
yep,
resentment for the fact that my parents were flawed people because, when you're a kid, they are perfect.
Yeah.
And it was that shift.
You realize they're making it up along as you go, right?
And doing
like,
the best
my brother
they
just
can.
my brother just had a baby, and
Yeah.
I'm like, he's got it. No way. But then I'm like, holy shit, that's what my parents. Yeah, I mean, especially moving here, they had no idea what the heck they were doing. Like the whole way.
Gosh, yeah.
Like
new country, new language, new everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't know.
That's everybody's parents.
Everybody's parents.
Yeah.
But realizing like for all the shortcomings that, they did the best that they could. And it was a realization for me of, I can't expect this person who doesn't have the capacity that my mom had to parent like her. Like he didn't have the capacity that she had. So it didn't make sense to hold on to like resentment or anything like that for something that someone literally just can't offer, So that was big for me. That second summer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like,
chills.
Oh yeah. Right. It was like legit like therapy. I mean, I still am in therapy because I think everybody needs therapy, but that was a turning point for me for sure in my life. And it was helpful. I remember I was upset and I was feeling sorry for myself. I'm like, why me? And blah, blah, blah. And I remember my stepdad, I was talking to my stepdad. He was like, read the book of Job. Like, okay, I guess I won't feel sorry for myself anymore. But yeah, that was big. That was like a lot of ahas, and I think a very like poignant turning point in life. And then what else with my summers? I think so my third summer, the reason I had this like half summer and then stopped and then came back.
Yeah, that's gonna say something have to happen there. What happened there?
So I tried to come back for the third summer, right? It was like, okay, I think I can do it. had gone, at this point, I had seen so many doctors and had so much like work done on my back. And because again, I was also an athlete. So I had access to all the like athletic doctors and stuff at UCLA. And so I was like, okay, I think I can do it. I think I can come back for a third summer. And I got out there and tried for like the first 3 weeks. And I was in such debilitating pain from my back. I was like, I can't do it. The whole like, you know, carrying the book bag and even just getting in and out of a car so many times.
Yeah. Or just being upright for 14 hours. I mean, you sit, but you're still like having to like, you know, present yourself and talk to people and be, it's hard to do with your back.
So
hurting.
I thought I could, and I physically couldn't. And then I felt so bad because that's like the worst thing for an org, right? Is for a manager to leave. Manager to quit early.
It's bad news, especially like a top producing manager.
Yeah.
You know, if it's like an off schedule manager, you're kind of like, oh.
It was, I felt so bad. I felt so bad. I was like, I'm totally destroying Ruthie's org and letting her down, but she was really sweet about it. So I was like, I can't do it. I tried for a few weeks. So it wasn't even a full maybe it was 5 weeks. I don't know, but I tried for a few and I was like, this is just not possible. I got to go home. So that's why it wasn't a full third, technically not a full second summer either, because I was incapacitated, but that's why it wasn't a full third summer, was because of the accident my second summer. And then went home and I was like, okay, I'm done with books. And then that's where I started exploring, you know, my last couple of years in college. Then I also wasn't able to row anymore because of my injury. So I had to quit rowing. But it opened up these other doors. Like I got to study abroad, which you can't do when you're an athlete because you have practice all year. Which was really cool. And actually, fun fact, one of the girls I studied abroad with, she ended up recruiting herself to sell books later. She was one of those that was like, what is this thing? I'm like, you do not want to do this.
Just total pony.
Yeah. I tried to talk her out of it. Because I was at that point, a couple of years later, I was just helping Omar because Omar and I were college roommates. So I was helping him like float and survey classrooms and stuff. And just because we're friends. And
and you're there. You might as well help a little bit. Yeah.
Why not?
Pay it forward.
And we were on campus and I was helping him. And she's like, she walks up to me. We studied abroad. She walks up to me and said, what is this? Like, oh, you do not want to do this. It's this crazy summer job. You don't want to do it. She's like, no, I'm looking for a summer job. I'm like, trust me, you don't want to do this. This is the worst thing ever. Like, well, what is it? She ended up basically recruiting herself.
Just negative selling her into it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
No, it's hard. It's really hard. You don't want to do it.
Oh,
Only people who like hard things. I love hard things.
I know. So Galavish. She ended up selling for a couple summers and then brought her little sister out. And her sister was my roommate my final summer. But
that's so fun.
Yeah. So but that allowed me to explore other things because I wasn't selling books.
So you said you started this PR firm. Like what?
Well, I didn't start it. So at that point, it was like, okay, let me find some other work, right? Because I'm not selling books, so that's not my job anymore. I need to find a different job. And then I wasn't rowing. So because as long as I was rowing, it was like, you know, I had I couldn't really have a job because you have so many practices. So that's basically your job while you're in school. But now it's like, okay, I have this time. I need to find some work. And so I was looking for internships. And I had, since high school, I'd been interested. And actually, like my godfather was always like, you should do sports reporting because I was an athlete and my godbrothers were all athletes. And so he always encouraged me, like, you should totally be a sports reporter because all these female sports reporters, they're all short and they look silly when they're holding a microphone up like this. And he's like, you would be so good at it. And you actually know sports really well. And you are tall and like, you should totally do it. So I was planning on interning actually at Fox Sports West. So it was like, sports reporting intern.
Yeah.
And that, like, I got that hook up through those connections, my godfather and like all those people. And, but I had applied for this other internship that I think I found on like Craigslist because this was back before Craigslist was uber shady. It probably still was shady back then, but whatever. But I found this other internship that was at this PR and marketing firm. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about that, but why not? And I remember the woman came on campus, she interviewed me. And I was like, well, I'm kind of interested in sports reporting. And she was like, well, I'll pay you. So the sports reporting one was unpaid. It was an unpaid internship. And she was willing to pay me. She said, no, I want you. I will pay you. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go work with her. And she was starting this thing from scratch, like very bare bones, grassroots. She didn't really know what she was doing, but she had moved out from Atlanta or something. She's from Detroit, moved out from Atlanta, and just had a dream. She had hustle and she had a dream, and she had been friends with Nelly, Nelly, the rapper.
Yeah. Good gracious.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sing it, but yeah.
Yes. Saint Lunatics.
Yes.
So that was like her first client. So she started this like PR company, but again, she really didn't know what she was doing, and she didn't know how to build a clientele. And so she hired me, and I'm like, I mean, I sell books. I can knock on doors. I can find people.
Sure.
And so I basically built her company for her. Like I found clients. I started booking talent. So I started developing relationships literally through cold calling. I would find numbers of whoever like the talent booking agents were on TV shows. And I started just becoming friends with the booking agents, the talent bookers or whatever. And so that's what I did is I booked all of our clients on press. So I did that.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was fun.
I
got to do fun stuff.
Did you ever get like a really famous person, like some really big clientele or something like that? Or was it more just like you were just generally processing whatever talent was coming through? Like what was the scope of this?
Yeah. At the time, like Nelly was probably the biggest client because he was big at that time. That's when he came out. Name. Yeah. And that's when he started Apple Bottom jeans. So that's what we were promoting was his new jean brand. Yeah. And then we had the cast of Coach Carter. So at the time, none of them were famous, but now, Channing Tatum is pretty famous. Yeah.
Yes.
But at the time, nobody knew them. I mean, people knew, of course,
he's as famous as he is pretty. Yeah.
There you go. So that was fun. And then I just had so many connections in sports because I had been an athlete. And when you're an athlete at a D1 school, you're friends with all the athletes. So I had a lot of connections in that world. And then my godbrothers, who I had mentioned, they all played sports. And so I had a lot of connections in that world and knew mostly football. So I knew several players. And so I was able to, get her some clients that way too, just because I knew football players. Sure. The most fun thing was so it was the Pro Bowl, and this is when the Pro Bowl was in Hawaii. And one of our clients was an ex-NFL player who had just written a book. So that's what we were promoting for him. And she couldn't go. So she had some scheduling conflict. And so she said, can you go to the Pro Bowl as his publicist? So I was like, sure.
I guess.
And
Whoa.
That was fun. That was fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Wow.
That was crazy and fun.
Your story is very like laced with the theme of what happens when you're open-minded.
Yes.
Or like what can happen when you're just like, sure.
I've told people that a lot is I do think I have been presented with a lot of opportunities that other people don't. Part of that is living in LA and being surrounded by entertainment. Yes.
Yeah, you don't get that in Grand Island, Nebraska.
Yeah. Sure. So there is an element that I know I have been presented with opportunities that not everybody has, but I do tell people that a lot. I also said yes.
Yeah.
When a lot of people would have said no.
Yeah, you had the ovaries to be like, screw it. It sounds scary, but
I'm why not?
I don't know anything like that. This PR thing. I don't know anything about PR, but let's jump in.
Yeah,
like
why not?
That
She's
why
gonna pay
not?
Me. Yeah.
So like that's, and it's amazing what that can. I mean, you are a living testament of how amazing that can be. Like,
yeah.
And it's not about meeting the stars or whatever. It's not, I mean, the fun, Kevin Hart story, but it's really more about like who. It's something about the glass ceiling that breaks, right? Not from a political standpoint, just in general, from like, hey, that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so because nothing's that big of a deal, then the biggest deal is attainable, which is huge.
Yeah, I think in general,
Wow.
a lot of my philosophy and my approach has been like, well, what do I have to lose? Like, it doesn't hurt to try. Like, that's kind of been my approach to so many things. It's like, well, I might as well, if I don't like it, I don't have to keep doing it, but I can try. And so, yeah, I have had a lot of very unique experiences in life. Yeah, I'll just say that. Lots of them.
Are those stories for Bizzler, or are you talking about
Probably. Yeah, those are
I
probably
can't
for Bizzler. Yeah.
Those are for once we're done recording, we're gonna get the
Yeah. It was funny.
the
We had our
conspiracy side.
incentive trip last week, and one of the wives of one of the guys Tony Merkel. Do you know Tony Merkel?
Oh yeah, and Olivia,
Yeah.
And
Olivia, his wife, she was asking me, she's like, so
yes,
I've heard
right.
all these stories about like all these famous people that you know, like tell me the best ones. And so we spent like an hour and I was telling her all these stories. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm just telling you the best ones though. Those are the ones that always freak people out. But yeah,
That's
that
wild.
that was really fun. The Pro Bowl was very fun. I was, playing spades and sitting on Donovan McNabb's lap. It's just, I just have very random things. Yeah. That was the first time I met T.O. And then I met him again later. And
great receiver.
Yeah. And then re-met him because that time when I met him, he was not friendly. He was very much a prima donna diva, which he still is, but now we're friends. So it's okay. Yeah.
But when you're TO and you're that talented at something, you're allowed. I mean, you shouldn't be.
Yes and no.
A little bit,
You are, but this was around every other best player. So I was like, come on, my guy. Yeah. You don't need to act like that.
Well, I guess Russell Wilson.
Well, he wasn't playing yet. Yeah.
But
it was like, really, you're not special amongst these people, Yeah. But now we're friends, so he's fine.
That's always what's amazing when you meet people who are so talented and they're still so down to earth. I think that's one of the.
Oh yeah.
That's why the biggest debate, like Messi and Ronaldo, right? Like you get your two greatest soccer players of all time, but Ronaldo's like that prima donna, like she's, I'm the best, and it's like, yeah, you are, but you do, but he is also, and he's not saying that.
Family man,
much better. Yeah, just
down to earth. Yeah.
Like every question about why are you so good is like, I can't do it without my teammates, even if he doesn't mean that, and that's just what he's putting out. He's wise enough to say that, which makes me.
But I think he means it. I think.
He does. Yeah, he does. But you know what I'm saying, like.
And that's more like sustaining, long lasting. You attract better people. Like that's the thing. That's the thing with Terrell is like he has alienated himself from most people because of that diva attitude. Like. Yeah, it doesn't serve you to act like that.
And I mean, if he's, I don't think he is. I'm not saying, I can't speak for him, but generally speaking, people, if they are happy living that way, then whatever. But I can't imagine that they're doing great from a security standpoint of like, here, these are people I can count on, or these are people because you haven't grounded yourself with the right people because of your attitude. Yeah,
right. Nobody wants to be around you that long.
No, that's amazing.
But yeah, that was a fun experience. I met actually one of my
as they are.
best friends at that Pro Bowl to this day. Like if I were ever in a pinch, I could call him. He won a Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf, the 99 Rams.
The greatest show on turf.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I can only imagine who the
you wouldn't know him. He was a receiver.
Okay. No, I don't know. Yeah. I know some sports, but I mean, I can talk ball, but I sometimes like there's too many balls. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't talk that many balls.
But yeah, that was a fun trip. We had a good time.
That's so crazy. But then why would you go back to sell books after having that kind of lifestyle?
Oh yeah, we got stuck there. So what ended up happening is she wasn't making money, and so she like stopped paying me my paychecks, and I was like, I'm not working here for free. You told me you were going to pay me. But she didn't have the money to keep paying me. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to work here anymore. So then I really was focused on music. So I transitioned and I was doing music, which I had, like I was in choirs in high school, right? And I'd done that. And then just friends from college were involved in the music business. And I had sang through college. So I was involved in like this choir in college. Shout out to African Arts Ensemble Envision Vocals. We won the McDonald's Gospel Fest.
Wow.
Yes. So I had friends that were involved in the music business and started like doing music with them, writing and demoing. And so I was really focused on that. And then that was fun too. That was a whole season that was fun and interesting, and also eventually not fun because that was before social media. So you didn't like, now it's a lot easier to actually build a name as an independent artist. Back then you still needed a label.
Oh yeah,
And
that was the days where it's like if you didn't even get recognized by Jamie Foxx or something, you're not gonna, like it's just not gonna work.
well, I did get recognized by Jamie Foxx, but this is different. This was that's a
You
whole
and Ed
other
Sheeran.
story. That's a whole other story. That's one of those
Wait,
crazy
for real?
stories that I told Olivia last week. Oh yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
that's a
Oh
whole
my
other
gosh,
story.
I was referencing Ed Sheeran because that was like his story, right? He was working his way through England, but he wanted to make it big, so he bought like a one-way ticket to LA, and he was happening to be performing at Jamie Foxx's like club, and Jamie Foxx is like, boom, and then he was discovered
he like
that way,
sponsored him. Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, that's like he's like part of the reason he's famous. Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
I was referencing. I didn't know what.
Oh yeah, the Jamie stuff.
We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna have a conversation after we're done recording.
Yeah, that's all. That's a whole nother story. By the way, please pray for Jamie. He can use prayers. He's in the hospital.
Yeah. Oh, is he? Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
but yes. But yeah, the all these. So I was doing music, and then that industry at the time was I was doing mostly pop and R&B, and at that time, the industry for a female pop and R&B artist was not very healthy. And it was like, if you wanted to make it in that field, that genre at that time, there were certain things that were expected of you as a woman that I was not willing to do.
I understand.
And so I was like, okay, well, music's not for me. And so then I was exploring, like I went and got licensed, like financial advice, life license and all that, to go toward like financial advisor route. And then I was like, no, that's not for me either. But it was interesting. I learned a lot, which actually serves me now in the role that I'm in.
What company?
Oh, it was one of those like MLM companies.
Oh, it wasn't Primerica, was it?
Yes.
I used to work for Primerica.
Did you?
Yeah, it's a great company.
So I got connected with them and I got licensed and I did all that. Yeah. But then I quickly was like, no, this isn't my jam.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to make it in that business in general because you gotta go against wholesale life insurance, right, which is a better. It's mathematically better, but it's hard to pitch because it's just the way the industry works is tough that way. Yeah, I get it.
Well, and they're not seen as like legit experts,
Yeah. Unfortunately, although the best guy I know for money besides like Matt Atchison and Brandon Q, even though they're not sponsoring this podcast, is a guy at Primerica where if I had to like, he's not licensed in Oregon, but if I'm next time I'm in Nebraska, I'll be like, yo, you need help because those guys know their shit.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different,
especially the ones at the top. Well, and the people that ran the office that I, went to or whatever are amazing people. Like I would want them to mentor me. I remember the wife, it was a husband and wife team. Yeah. And I remember Connie, she was talking about last name? Oh, no.
I bet you I'd know them.
You might.
Yeah.
Really cool. Black couple. They had a bunch of kids in
anyway.
Playa del Rey, I think they were.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's a ton of them. There's so many in California.
They were big. Yeah. They did very, very well. Yeah.
They're probably millionaires.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, easily.
Easily.
And you can do it in that company. It's possible in that company.
It is possible.
The grind is just tough.
It's crazy. But she was awesome. And the lesson that I got from her that I still take to this day is once you can afford to pay to get your time back, you should, i.e., pay for a cleaning person, pay for a nanny, pay for a chef, pay for she was like, you should pay for those services so that you can get your time back because time is more valuable than money. I was like, ooh, that's good.
There's a book there's a guy named Nate Hambrick who wrote a book. He now works at self-publishing, and he, which again, they should sponsor us, but he wrote a book, and I was reading about this specific concept where it blew my mind. I never had thought about it this way. Because, people think of, oh, you have a cleaning lady, you must have a ton of money or something like that. It's like, not necessarily. It just means that if I do the dishes in my house, and that takes me even half an hour, and that costs me, if I charge $250 an hour for this consulting appointment or whatever, that means that I am losing $125 every time I do the dishes,
Right.
let alone vacuum, laundry.
Right.
Or I can pay someone $300 a week.
Yep.
And save
Get the
those
time back.
4 hours,
Yes.
and then you're net positive. I had never heard of that concept until like 2
Yes.
years ago.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. Yeah.
Great concept. And I think even important, like what I loved about what Connie said was, even if you're not monetizing that time, it's invaluable. Like it's time you're getting with your family. It's time you're getting with the people you care about. It's time you're getting to do what you want to do rather than cleaning the house.
It's an extra hour of sleep, which is a lot sometimes if you're hustling. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I dipped my toe into that and was like, this isn't for me. And then I got most of these jobs on Craigslist. This is funny, actually, now that I think about it, because Craigslist was legit. I found roommates on Craigslist. It wasn't so crazy. Yeah, this was back in the day. Back in the day. And then, the job I had before I came back to Southwestern was as a personal assistant for a CPA in Beverly Hills he worked with like a lot of very wealthy people in entertainment, and I was his personal assistant. So I did that for probably a year, and it was obviously like, okay, this is not what I'm going to do with my life, but I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And then Ron reached out. So I had never worked directly under Ron, but Ron and Nate like co-led SEEDS that then became Redline.
Right.
So my first couple of years, it was still SEEDS. The couple of years that I was out of it, that's when SEEDS had dissolved and it had been changed over to Redline. And Nate at that point wasn't leading the West. He wasn't leading the US anymore. He was just leading Canada. So now Ron Alford was leading the whole organization. So I had known who Ron was because like the way our org worked was Kaya and Ruthie were my co-OLs, but they both reported to two different people. Like Ruthie went up the chain to Nate and Kaya went up the chain to Ron. So I had been like affiliated, but hadn't directly reported to Ron. Anyway, Ron reached out and he asked for my help. He was like, would you be open to helping Omar? He got me. He knew my sweet spot.
There it is.
Yeah. He knew my
Who doesn't want to help Omar?
Gosh. Who doesn't want to help Omar? And Omar was my college roommate. Like I love Omar. Omar's one of my favorite people on the planet. Right.
Yeah. Same.
So, and like one of my best friends, So Ron was like, would you be willing to come out for the summer and help Omar? He's recruited this massive team and he only has like 2 B managers. So he had recruited, I don't even remember how many people it was, 40 people.
20.
I might be exaggerating, but.
Well, the total org is huge, but himself personally was like 20 or 30 or 40. It might have actually been him.
It was so many people.
Yeah. It was like a ridiculous amount.
It was a ridiculous team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just had a couple of B managers. And so Ron was like, would you be willing to come out and help Omar just for the first half of the summer and field train? So basically shadow first years.
Right.
And so I'm like, sure. I was at a place where I'm like, okay, I don't want to be doing this job anymore anyway. So it was really perfect timing. So I, left that job, the personal assistant job, and went out for the summer with Omar's team and field trained his first years for the first 6 weeks. And the first half of the summer was in Baltimore County, Maryland. And it was awesome. I had so much fun. I would spend like a day per first year and just, shadow them and then give them feedback. Around. Yeah.
That's so great.
It was so much fun. His org had the whole state of Maryland, and then I think it was Maryland and Virginia, but I was staying in Maryland. And, after 6 weeks, which later Ron told me that they knew this would happen because it always happens when they hire a field trainer. Because like, we'll pay you just to shadow first years. Like, okay. That after those first 6 weeks, it was like, okay, if these kids who have no idea what they're doing can sell books, I can definitely sell books. So I ended up staying.
Oh.
Yes, they got me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, you got.
I got. So I stayed for the second half of the summer, and that's I sold in McLean, Virginia, which is part of Fairfax County, the wealthiest county in the United States, at least at that time. So that's where I hit Mort Utley. I think I did it in like 5 days.
Damn.
But that was
Beast
another learning
mode.
lesson, is there was no pressure, right? Like there was no expectation. So I could just go out and just talk to people and have fun, and there was no expectation and no pressure. And it was, very, very wealthy people. So as soon as I got a couple referrals going, it was a
Done.
walk in the park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it when people say territory doesn't matter. It does if you know how to work it. And the way you work Big
for sure.
Brick is you get 1 or 2 good names. It's
Yep.
over because
Yep.
they're competitive with each other. They'll ask things
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"What did Peggy get?" And
Yes.
Peggy got the bag.
Peggy got the
then I
bag.
guess we're gonna get that. All right,
Yep.
cool. And then
Actually,
we
that
go
was
back
her
to
name.
Peggy.
The first woman was Peggy.
It's always, see, I'm telling you. Tell me I sold books without telling you I sold books.
Oh my God, it's so
Peggy-
funny.
Peggy's and Tammy's. They always
Yeah.
buy. I never
Peggy.
met a Tammy that didn't buy.
Oh yeah, that's good. Tammy's.
Tammy would say, "Hi, what's your name?" Tammy. I'm like, cool. I'm nice. Got a place to sit down. Yeah.
Yeah, that
good.
was fun because McLean is where all the like diplomats and senators and all that live.
Government officials.
Yeah, all the government people. So the attorney general. At the time it was the who was in office?
Bush would have been in 07.
Bush, yeah, the second Bush. So, Dick Cheney was vice president. So Liz Cheney, she had 5 kids. And so I was trying to get into her house because everyone in the neighborhood was like, you got to get Liz. You got to get Liz.
Your first name basis with Liz?
Yeah. And I was like, I want to get her so bad. I got a bunch of like the, what are they called? People from other countries.
Diplomats, like foreign diplomats?
Was it diplomats? Yeah. Ambassadors.
Yeah.
Ambassadors and diplomats.
Sure.
Yeah. I sold to all of them because they were like, oh, we're only here for a 2-year stint and we have no idea what your education system is like. So yeah, we'll buy anything you have, know? So yeah, they were awesome. I sold to like the French ambassador and the something.
Dana to the rescue.
Yeah. But I was trying to get into Liz Cheney's house, but every time I went to her house, it was the nanny. She was never there. The nanny was always there, but I made friends with her Secret Service people. So that was fun. They were cool. So I got to the point because I tried her at least a dozen times, and every time I'd come by and the Secret Service like, sorry, she's not here yet, but do you need anything? And then I would be like, oh, do you need a snack?
Yes. Was that the most famous person you sold, or you almost met?
I didn't sell to her
or something like that, or like like for me, the most famous person I actually met in the book field was Mario Andretti.
Oh,
like the Formula 1 world champion.
No, I know the most famous person I met.
Who is this?
This was my last summer. Dr. J.
Dr. J. Who's Dr. J? Wait.
Basketball. Julius Erving.
Oh, Dr. J. The B-ball. Okay. That's
legend.
Wait, and you met you sold?
No, he's old, but I knocked on his door. He lived in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. J. I show up to Mario's house and it's his wife just smoking a fat stogie and in this like courtyard. And I park my little like Mitsubishi Eclipse and it's like, hey, are you the? And I mean, I knew whose house I was at, and she's like, 1 second. And then Mario comes in. He's like, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm selling books. He goes, you want to try next door? And it was funny because Michael, his son, lived next door with kids, and he goes, you should go next door. But I mean, I'm a huge Formula 1 fan, so I was like,
oh, that's fun,
it is him. It is him. It was crazy.
That would be fun.
But I mean, I knew he was old. He wasn't going to buy. But you never know. Cookbook here and there.
You never know. They might buy for the grandkids or the neighborhood kids. You just never know.
Or just because you're sweating it, and they're like, you know what? Here's a couple $100,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is what we spent on toilet paper.
No, I never. But a lot of people in my org did. So again, Amara sold to LL Cool J's wife. Was it Ron? Ron sold to Harry Connick Jr.
That's
1 year.
Ron didn't tell us this. Come on.
Oh,
Ron.
yeah. That was in Connecticut. Because it's an interesting story. Harry was not nice.
Oh.
Yeah. I think he was intimidated by Ron.
But Ron.
Because Ron was talking to his wife. And then he comes in like, what are you doing? What is this? And he's a small man. And Ron is very tall.
And fit.
So I think and fit. Yeah. and I don't think he liked that. Um,
Wow.
but no, I never sold to anybody famous. I tried knocking on some doors when I was in Baltimore. I knocked on some of the Ravens doors. I sold to one of the coaches, but he wasn't like the head coach. He was like,
Right.
yeah.
Wow, that's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. One of
Why
my
did
favorite
you?
people, in McLean, she was badass. She worked for NASA, this mom, and she was like some super high up, crazy, like space scientist for NASA. She was so cool.
People like that are just bananas. Those are the
Yeah.
people that are rich and not famous, and you're like, those people are cooler.
Oh
'cause
yeah.
it's
That's
like,
all McLean. McLean is a
Yeah.
bunch of very, very wealthy people, most of whom are not famous. Same with my last summer. My last summer was Mercer Island, Washington. So I did go by Bill Gates's one of his houses.
Oh, you're over here, just up the road.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was my final summer.
Dang. Why did you leave?
Selling books?
We're getting close to the end here. Yeah.
Oh.
Because yeah.
Yeah. So after that summer in like Maryland, Virginia, it was like, then they got me again. So I'm back on campus and like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? Because by this point I had graduated. So then I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do next? And Henry Bedford and Dan Moore came out to LA.
God.
Yes. And they tag teamed me, took me to lunch. And Henry Bedford was like, well, you really learn a lot when you full-time recruit. And
That's
there's
a great
things that
Henry
you
impression.
I love Henry. I was just with him last week. And he's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
there's just things that it's just there's so much stuff that you learn that you can't learn any other way. And, Dan Moore, of course, is, and, it's just so good on your resume. There's nothing like it. It would just be, just a great thing to do to pad your resume while you, go out into the workforce. So they got me. And I full-timed that year with Omar, and we had a blast. We had so much fun. And that year, so the year on Maryland, Virginia we had 100% retention. Omar had 100% retention. None of his first years quit.
Which is outrageous.
I know.
Outrageous.
I know. It was
That
20
man.
something. It was 20 something.
I think it was 20, but the org was like
bigger.
all his other people had. Yeah,
it was 20 something first years. And they all stayed.
How crazy.
100% retention. So, of course, it was because I field trained them.
Naturally. So
Clearly.
If you're listening in your current OOL, just for a small fee, you can get Dana to go.
No, you cannot get me, but you should invest in a field trainer. It is totally worth it. 100%. Find an old book person that's willing to do it. So anyway, that following year, we brought out an org of 40 something people that last year. But we had so much fun full-timing, so much fun. It was a blast. And Henry and Dan were right. I learned, skills that you really don't learn any other way selling books, that serve me now. Like having to actually call people and book meetings over the phone, right? Book, what are those called? Notebooks?
Info
sessions.
Yeah.
So, and then just learning the whole recruiting process, like really the ins and outs of an effective recruiting process. Because I do that now, right? Like I recruit salespeople, coaches, but also I coach a lot of people on how to effectively recruit and hire.
Wow.
But yeah, so we full-timed for a year and then we swapped. So all the kids from like Oregon, Washington came down to California, and all the California kids went up to Oregon and Washington. And so we were in the Seattle area, and I sold on Mercer Island my final summer.
Yeah, that's a crazy place. That's crazy. So you had to drive from LA to Nashville to Seattle to Nashville to LA.
Yeah, I didn't. I flew, but other people did.
That's
I was like, I'm not doing that.
That's a long drive. I've driven. I mean, I'm from Nebraska and I live in Portland, so that drive is, although it is beautiful. People are like, it's not the same as going from like Nebraska or Nashville to like New York, because the Appalachians are beautiful, but when you go through Wyoming and Utah and Idaho and Oregon, it's a beautiful drive. But it's 20 hours.
And you guys took that route, so you took the route from the north down. Like being from LA, we just went straight across the 10. So it was through like the desert.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. It's just flat as all get out. Yikes.
That's all
No.
it is. It's flat. You go from California to whatever's next, Nevada or
You
something,
go
and then
California,
Arizona,
Arizona,
New
and then New
Mexico,
Mexico, Texas, and then up. Oof.
Texas, Oklahoma.
Louisiana.
You go through the
Yeah.
little tiny piece of Oklahoma. I think there was
It's
Arkansas was in
brutal.
there. Yeah.
That's a terrible drive. That's the worst drive in the country. That sucks.
Yeah. But yeah, so final summer, I did, I came out full time to Thomar. We brought a 40 something person org. And then he ran the Oregon section and I ran the Washington section. And then it was good. I learned a lot, but it also took a toll. Like my back was still problematic in that job because it's very physically taxing. Like it's more physically taxing than I think I realized.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't do it. Like
Yeah,
my
you
back
would lose weight in the summer. Like you would
Oh, yeah.
go to Starbucks and you'd come back 15, 20 pounds lighter. It's a great, I mean, not because you ate well and it's a good, it was peanut butter jelly sandwiches and hikes. Just like,
Well, I did not. My first summer, I got a little pudge, even though I was a walker, because I was eating so much peanut butter and jelly. And I was eating so late because I was a walker. So I didn't carry as much food. Like I didn't carry a cooler. I had what I could fit in my little backpack. So I wouldn't eat dinner usually until we got home to the HQ. And then I'd eat like pasta at 10 p.m.
rough. Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll get a little pudge that way. No, I would come back ripped. Like I came
know.
back
Most people
and I
came
was
back super
jacked.
ripped
Yeah.
and then had the horrible tans, like the little ankle tans, farmer
right in
tans,
that,
ankle tans.
oh yeah, with the polos.
Bad.
It's rough.
Oh yeah. No, I just
it's
got
so good.
really bad mosquito bites.
Yeah. Same. That's actually probably one of the biggest reasons I didn't knock late when I started getting off schedule. Was because
I don't blame you.
And here's the deal: my wife would tell you if there's mosquitoes around. I read this. There's like something about certain blood types where you are sugar.
Yes, that's me.
Same. We were standing. There was we were walking our dogs. Way tangent story, but we were walking our dogs. Stopped to talk to a new neighbor who just bought a house. Stopped to talk to a neighbor. Within like the minute and 12 seconds, she didn't get bit once. I had like 18 bites that I could count.
Oh
and
yeah.
She's like, how? And I'm like, I don't know. This is all. So when I'm knocking on a door and I'm waiting and it's dark, the sweat makes the repellent go away. I'd have bites. It was crazy. The biggest thing I learned during that time of the day from Southwestern was the discipline to not scratch your mosquito bites, which is a tough lesson to learn. But it gives you it, so it makes it so they don't itch ever again. If you can just resist that,
it's true.
Insane.
I heard that that's what they teach, like Buddhist monks, is to ignore the itch. If you have an itch, ignore the itch. Yeah.
Fido talks about that. You probably met Fee because he's
sold in
Redline. Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about he just sits there for like 2 hours. Yeah. He sits there for like an hour and doesn't move. Nothing, even if it itches or something. It's crazy.
No,
he's like a different mental lift.
I know. He's on another level now. But yeah, that was my final summer, and it was just the physical aspect of it, and it was time to move on. Like it was time.
It felt right. Yeah. Once you graduate, you're like, all right, next chapter. Chapter 12.
I learned the lessons from full timing. I'm grateful that I did it, but it was I physically couldn't do the job.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you think back on your career, is there anything that you wish would have done different, whether that be in Southwestern or as you look back in your career in like consulting, maybe that you're like, I wish if you could go back and talk to your 19-year-old self or as you were starting consulting, hey, do this or don't do that. Is there anything you'd say?
That's a great question. People ask me that a lot within Southwestern Consulting. People do ask that a lot. Like, oh, if you could do it different from what you did when you started your consulting career. And I have to tell people I really wouldn't do it different because I think I did it well. I just literally did what they told me to do. Like they said, do this amount of activity and you're going to be good. And I was like, that's it. Yes, that's it. So that's all I did. I just focused on doing the work and doing the activity. And that's what I would do again. Like, that's what I would tell people. That's what I would do again. I think you know, it's interesting. Again, this first part of this year has been like my lowest results, like my least, you know, sales results in my entire career at Southwestern Consulting, other than my first year. My first year was like learning, you know.
Sure.
And so that's one thing that I would do differently, is I kind of already alluded to it, is I shifted my focus to the wrong thing. I shifted my focus to this like goal that really hadn't ever, not ever, but it hadn't really been a big goal of mine. It was more like other people saying like, oh, you're so close. Like, this is what you should go after, or you should really be focused on this. And so I shifted my attention to this, accomplishing this result. And, you know, you can't control results. So that would be the one thing. Although, I don't know, I'm kind of the person too that's like, I wouldn't change anything because I always learn from it.
Yeah.
So I learned
That's
from
an
it
interesting.
though.
I'm a lot more that way.
Yeah.
Like, I was way off schedule. There was a summer where I came back home and I owed the company money. That was the summer I found out my parents were
That was
getting
my last
divorced.
summer. I owed Ron money.
It was great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Not so good.
What am I going to learn from this? Right. It's just interesting.
Yeah. I learned like to really listen to myself and not push myself past a limit that I really can't do. Like that's been a big lesson just overall in life, I think, is learning how to say no and learning how to set boundaries and learning how to respect my own boundaries and require other people to respect boundaries and require other people to respect no. And that's something that, you know, I think for book people, that's hard because you're taught to like, just keep going until you get a yes, and just keep going until you get a yes. And it's not a no, it's just a no for now. And I really don't ascribe to that. Like, I respect people's no because I want mine respected.
Yeah. And it's an interesting balance, right? Because there is something to be said about, hey, I did a second approach and then they bought. Like, there's that story. But then there's like also like, hey, it's very clear that you should not second approach this.
Yeah.
So just move on. Right. So, and I think that's what makes you like, that's where you start making jumps from like, oh, I sold 200 units a week to Mort, is you start getting really good at discerning like, this person is not saying no, and this person is for sure saying no.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm the type of person, this has been part of my career, even here at Southwestern Consulting, is I will tell people a lot, I'm not the best salesperson. There are other people that we work with that are phenomenal salespeople when it comes to skill, and I think better than I am. I just talk to more people historically.
Yeah.
So I'm the person that I would rather talk to more people, and I may have a lower closing ratio. I just talk to more people. Other people have higher closing ratios for sure, but I just do not like pushing people, pressuring people, twisting people's arms. Like, don't get me wrong, I will close somebody 5 times. But if I've tried all the tools in my tool belt, and at Southwestern Consulting, we teach 15 to 20 different closing techniques. But I will try all the tools in my tool belt, and I will try all of the closes. And if I still can't get the person, I let them go. Like, I would rather find somebody who actually is open-minded, who wants what I have to offer, who feels like they are going to benefit from what I have to offer. Because that person ends up being a way more enjoyable client for me than the one I had to convince. Yes.
They won't cancel. It's preach.
Yes. I don't like having to crew people.
We're not so different, you and I, you know.
That's just my style. Yeah.
I haven't said on
I'm
TO's
much more laid
lap.
back.
I haven't said on
I
TO's
didn't sit on TO's lap. It was Donovan McNabb.
Or Donovan. I haven't said on a, but I can tell you, it's funny because when we met, my wife and I, you know, I told her I had been in sales like pretty much half my life, or my entire professional life. And she goes, oh, you must be really good at convincing people. And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
I actually suck at convincing people.
I don't want to convince people.
What I am good at is finding people who think like I think, like this right here, where I meet someone like you and I'm like, I bet you I could ask you for a favor or to like invest in something, you specifically, because I know how you think. We're the same type of person, and it makes sense. Versus I've had people here on the show where I'm like, I'm not like you at all. I would never feel comfortable even doing that. Like, I can't convince you. It's like, whereas if I was to say something to you like, hey Dana, here's how I'm approaching this, here's how I'm thinking about it, I know that you would understand and see it my way, and then you would go, oh sure, I'll invest in that, or I'll help you out with this.
Yeah.
And you meet those people, and that's what I am good at, is just finding that same synergy and going, we can work together on, whether that's raising money for Ukraine people or blah, blah, blah. Like we're on the same page, and I can tell almost within 2 minutes, this is my kind of person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and
just a different,
huge.
It's a different way to sell, right? And there's different philosophies on sales, and that works for some people. Like the, no is only a no for now. But I don't ascribe to that. I'd also, just on a side note for all of you listeners out there that happen to be men, whole pushing somebody until they say yes is triggering for a lot of women also.
Oh my God.
Yeah. A lot of women have been in situations where they were pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to do things they did not want to do. So that sales tactic is like an ick for me. I don't like it. So I don't do it. And I respect people's no. Again, I will close you 10 times and do my best. But if I can't get you at that point, also my philosophy, especially when it comes to coaching, because like I said before, I'm very convicted in coaching, and I'm convicted in what we do. And I know it really helps people and changes people's lives, but people also have to be ready for it, because so much of their success in coaching is them. It's not us as a coach. Like I tell people that all the time. I'm 10%, you're 90%. So
when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
100%. Yes.
So they have to be open. They have to be ready. And again, I don't want to have to twist arms. I don't want to have to convince people. It's just not my style. And especially for something that I feel convicted is good for them, but they're having a hard time making a decision. Like that's dumb to me.
Yes. And you know what? The best, oh man, this is such a great conversation. I love that you're saying, first of all, from the standpoint of men, they need to hear this, because women say no, and no is fucking no. Like,
like respect a no.
Please preach.
Let a no be a no. Sometimes
God, just leave it, leave it be. And here's the deal. It's actually more likely to eventually, like, I understand the philosophy of it's just not yet. Like when they say no, it means not yet.
Sure.
Yeah. But that sometimes not yet means years, right? Like to put it in book terms, maybe you knocked on the door and they had 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. So maybe they didn't want moo-foos, but then you come back 7 years later and all of a sudden those kids are in middle school and they need help with math, and now they're ponies, right? So that's the not yet sometimes doesn't mean try next week or try hard or stupid. It just means read the room, dumbass. So preach on that. But I think also too, that when you talk about like low pressure and like not twisting people's arms, that is literally the core of the buying atmosphere. Like when we were selling, like earlier, you talking about
100%.
the sales cycle. To me, the greatest piece of advice that I learned from a technical selling point from Southwestern was when they said, hey, you're going to sit down with Mrs. Jones. You're going to tell her, hey, I'm going to show you something. Thanks for being open-minded. If you don't want it, if it's not for you, just tell me no and I'll move on. And then you mean that shit.
Yeah.
Like really internalize that.
Yep.
Really genuinely not care. Yep. A, more likely to say yes, but B, leave when they say no.
Right.
That was the contract, social contract you just built. You said, hey, I'll show you yes or no, and I'm out. And just stick with it. Oh, cute puppy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, I love that you're saying that, because that's some people lose that even within Southwestern, and it's like, bro, move on.
Yeah. Well, and if you truly have an abundance mentality and you do believe there's more than enough opportunity out there, you can say that with conviction that, hey, if this isn't for you, that's fine, because there's more than enough people out there that whatever you're selling, it is for, right? It's for somebody, or else you wouldn't have that product or service. So it's just find your people, find your tribe, like find the people that your service is a fit for, and the people that it's not, okay, go find the ones it is.
Move on.
Yeah.
And if you got one yes, that means there's another one. But it took me 700 doors. Well, then go knock on 700 more doors. And it's probably less because you get better at every door. Oh my gosh.
It's true.
Wow, Dana, this
Look
has
at
been
us
fun.
dropping gems. I know.
Okay. All right. We're going to do rapid fire and then some details. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Been going for a little bit here. Holy cow.
I know.
By the way, people are like, I don't have that much to talk about. And they always say that. And then it's like, you get into it. And all of a sudden it's like, the
number one thing people like to talk about is themselves.
Yeah. So tell me about you. What's your thing? Okay. All right. Rapid fire questions. Some of these you've already answered, so we can, I'll skip some of these, but here we go. So out of the 5 summers that you sold, what was your favorite territory? I think I can guess, but I'm assuming it's going to be either Virginia or that Mercer Island, but what was your favorite like city or county that you sold in?
Oh man. No, actually it was my first summer. It was Scotch Plains, New Jersey.
Scotch Plains, New Jersey.
Yeah. They adopted me like I was their kid.
Yeah. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Now we talked about favorite
I did
turf. You
love
said Big Brick.
McLean, but yeah, Big Brick was my fave. Because, and then I found later on, I'm not doing a very good rapid fire, but what
Oh,
was
no, it's
interesting
okay.
is then when I sold Tom James, I felt like I was
take
selling
long.
to the dads. So I had sold to all the moms, Big Brick, and then Tom James was selling to all the dads.
You're like, I got this. I wish you were in a mower. Actually, it'd be better. I wish you were out front your door.
Yeah, I was like,
on a
oh, I
mower.
sold
Get you
books
some
to
suits.
your wife on the East Coast. That version. I probably sold books to her.
Mr. Peggy.
Exactly.
Oh man. Oh, okay. And by the way, these rapid fire, they don't have to be answered fast. It's just
Oh, okay.
like this.
Okay.
It's just, yeah. It's we can expand on these.
Yeah.
Favorite advanced sales tape if you listen to them.
Oh yes. What was my favorite? KJ.
Oh yeah, with his moo.
That was my fave.
Mm.
That was my fave on
Yeah.
CD. I probably still have
yeah.
those somewhere.
We all do. It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Southwestern Daddy Issue 101 sample case with like old sample books. My
Oh
monitor
no,
right
I definitely
now
got rid of those.
My monitor right now is propped up, and I did this on purpose, on a sample book and in a cookbook, and then my monitor.
Amazing.
It's true.
Amazing.
True story.
I love it.
KJ's was great because he did the dogology as well, right? Where he talks about how to like handle dogs and
Yes,
stuff.
that was my favorite.
Yeah, it was great.
Was that him? Whoever did that one, that was my favorite.
Yeah, because he talks about the guy that got the sample case and like he hit that one dog because they was chasing him. He just turned around and he hit the dog with the sample case and he killed the dog.
That was KJ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that one was my fave. Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to KJ. I got a hold of him. He's going to be on the show probably later on in season 10. So keep an eye out for that episode. Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Okay.
Favorite HQ.
Oh.
Do I want to assume? But
what's that?
I was gonna assume your second summer.
Yeah.
That
it was my second summer. Favorite HQ. Cindy Warner.
Out to Cindy.
Yeah.
Cindy Warner. Shout out. Favorite product to sell or tack on?
Oh my gosh. My favorite product to sell was the whole bag.
Yes.
That was the best.
Favorite product? Yes.
Yeah. The whole bag. The whole, what did we call it? 9-book set or whatever it was?
Well, you guys, that would have been VLs at the time.
Yeah, I was VLs. Yeah. All of them.
The bag. Let's
go. The whole blue set. And the green ones. We had a couple little green ones too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down with that.
That was my favorite product to sell.
Your favorite, now this doesn't have to be in production, although it can be, but like your best or favorite sales day. Like if you could think of one day that you had out there that it could have been the day that, that mom fed you after 9 p.m. that you were almost gonna like quit or something like that, where it was like, I'll never forget this day on the book field.
Oh, this one was fun. Well, there's several days I'll never forget on the book field, but this one was really fun. So my first summer, New Jersey, toward the end of the summer, I don't know if this happened to you, but toward the end of the summer, like HQs would get shuffled a little bit because of territory and all that.
And people leave. Yeah.
And people leave. So toward the end of the summer, we had another roommate, Estella, and she had been with a different HQ and then she came with us. So toward the end of the summer, I was borrowing a car or something like that. And I went to go pick her up. So I was going to pick her up from her territory, and it was, whatever it was, 9 or 10 p.m. This was the last day of the summer. So I went to her. She was selling. I remember she was selling to a family, and she used the whole like, well, you have a Nintendo. Like she used that whole line of like, you spent money on the Nintendo. So you should spend money on books. And they did. So she sold her last house. By now it's like 10:30 p.m. So we had to drive from her territory back to our HQ, which is probably 30 to 40 minutes. So we get back, it's after 11 p.m., might be close to midnight. And there had been this tiny little subdivision near our HQ that was like these massive homes. It was like one little cul-de-sac, right? With these massive homes on it. And so I was like, Estella, let's go to that street. Like, let's just do it. Let's go knock on one of those doors. And it's like midnight.
No.
Yeah. And so, oh no, what was her name? Her name wasn't Estella. Anyway, I can't remember what her name was, but we went and we found one of the houses, and there was lights on upstairs. They had huge windows, and there was lights on upstairs, and we could see people. So there were people talking that were awake. It's like midnight, but people are awake. And so I was like, that's the one. Go knock on that one. And she goes and knocks on this door at like midnight. And the woman's like, she comes down, like opens the door, and she steps back her little 2 steps, and she turns and she goes, Estella? To the woman. This is not her name. I kind of ruined the story. But now that I'm remembering it, she goes, Estella? Like just picks a name out of nowhere,
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought she said that to the girl that was selling. Like she recognized her.
No. The girl that's selling, I can't remember her name. Esther or something. I wish I could remember her name. I couldn't remember her name. But she says it to the mom. Like the mom answers the door and she goes, Estella? No joke. The mom goes, yeah, I'm Stella. And we both were speechless. Like, this cannot be possible. And so she's like, like she was stumbling over her words. Like she didn't know what to say next. She's like, well, I'm the one in the neighborhood that's talking to all the moms, like about school stuff. And the woman was like, okay, but can you come back tomorrow? Like it's very late.
Oh my God.
That was probably one of my favorite days.
I could never. Never.
Estella? Yeah, I'm Stella. Unbelievable.
Yo, that's so the bananas.
The bananas. Yeah. It was crazy.
Wow. That's a great sales day. That's fun.
That one was fun. That was our last day before delivery week.
So good.
Yeah.
Man. What was your favorite breakfast spot?
Oh, I don't remember a lot of the breakfast spots. No, I would say my second summer, we did Panera. And I did love that. We had a great time at Panera. I had soufflés like every single day. But we would read Og and get our soufflés. Yep. Read Og, get our soufflés. Oh, I have like 85 copies. I give it away in my workshops. Greatest salesman in the world. Yeah. Nice. That's my giveaway prize.
We had my door prize. Their CEO was on our show a couple episodes ago. Like
amazing.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. I literally have a drawer of copies.
Made an exception.
Of the greatest salesman in the world.
That's great.
And then there's a really worn out copy up there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Bible. It's the Bible for salespeople.
The best. It actually, what's interesting? I did not realize until a client. So we used to have, or maybe we still do, we have greatest salesman in the world in our packages, like our care packages that we send to new coaching clients. So when coaching clients enroll in coaching, we send them this care package that has books and stuff in it. And Greatest Salesman in the World is one of the books. I did not realize until a Jewish client pointed out to me, like she wasn't offended because she's like, the principles in it are great, but it's like the Bible.
It's a Christian book.
Yeah, it's a Christian book. And I was like,
it's
what?
a book about St. Paul. It's about Paul. Paul, and he's the guy that gives Jesus his blanket. That's
yes, and the last chapter, which I don't think I ever got to. I never read the last chapter until she said that. She's like, yeah, it literally references the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
So what's really interesting is, have you seen The Chosen, the TV show?
No, I just heard about it from somebody who told me I need to watch it.
Angel Studios bought the licensing rights to this, and they're going to turn this into a TV show. No. That's what Dave was talking about in this episode. You should go check out that episode. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, if you guys are listening and you would like to invest, and I mean invest, not donate, because they give you you can buy rights or you can buy shares of the actual entire TV show. It could be, even if it's minimal, you can pay. They're trying to raise like $100,000 or $200,000. I'll go. I just spoke to Dave literally an hour before I started recording with you, because we're starting a podcast for them, or we're trying to work on that. But they're trying to. So if you want to buy rights, buy some of the shares of the TV show to see how you can do so, just let us know. Just message us on Instagram, or send us an email at admin@theponytailspodcast.com. That's admin@theponytailspodcast.com. We'll get you in touch with Dave so you can I don't mean to make a plug right now, but
no, this is awesome, because I want to be, you can be like a producer.
Yeah, you can be a producer of the show. So,
that's so cool.
They're looking to raise the money, so, and he was like, that's part of the reason why he came on the show. He's like, I bet you alumni would love to
Heck yeah.
Put money
Well,
on
you
something
know,
like that.
Henry Bedford's son is a filmmaker.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes, Hank.
So there you go.
He's a filmmaker.
Interesting.
Yes.
So that's sweet. Okay, last question of
Okay.
the rapid fire. This is great. Best follow day.
Oh, okay. Best follow day. I was following Peggy Spillinger, and she at the time when I sold books was like a legend. And I went to go follow her because I think Ruthie had suggested it. And I was so intimidated by her. And she was a machine. She was just like, no nonsense. I don't even know if she looked at me. She was just like, go, 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 like head down to the ground. And I'm shadowing her in her territory, and she's running into major struggles, like door slammed in her face, people cussing her out, like crazy. And we get to her. She was driving, I think, a white Jeep, if I remember correctly. And at one of the points, like in between houses, she explains to me, I'm like, wow, that's intense, you know? And she explains, she's like, oh yeah, I got written up in their local newspaper. And so everybody's been told like not to talk to me. So that's why everybody's so mean to me. And she did not care. She just kept going and kept knocking on the doors in that neighborhood. But yeah, she was like the pariah of their neighborhood. She'd been written up in their newspaper. This was pre like Facebook days. Yes.
Now this happens every day. Now you have to be productive,
every day.
proactive with it, because it's just like
now they have to
you're
create
on-
their little
there's like-
Facebook profiles. Yeah,
There's like HOA groups,
I know.
like where you hit a neighborhood and they're live tracking. You know, she's going down 17th Street, Karen. She's coming to you. And you're
I
like,
know.
You get there and Karen's like, I knew who you are. I just saw you. You're like, what? And there's pics that some parents are like, cool, and they'll show you the pictures that moms are taking from their porches.
Yeah.
Of you leaving. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Oh,
do it,
I
though.
remembered a different favorite day. Can I share another favorite day?
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
Complete. Oh,
So this is
actually no. But yes, please, for the love of God.
So this is one of my favorite stories. So I my first summer I'm in New Jersey. You know, I'm a little California girl from from California and New Jersey. So I don't know this territory and these people. So I am in the morning, you know, in the early morning, you try to find the houses that have all the big toys in the yard because, you know, they have toddlers, right? So I had gone to this one house because they had the swing and all that kind of toddler stuff in their yard. And it took a while, but the mom eventually came to the door and she was like in her bathrobe and all this stuff. And I had shown her the Ask Me Whys, or when I started, they were called something else. Tell Me Why. They were called Tell Me Whys. And now they're Ask Me Whys, right?
Fun fact. Yeah, that's correct. I didn't
Okay.
know. Cool.
So yeah, Tell Me Whys is what they were called before. So I had sold the Tell Me Whys with the whole like, do you know why flamingos are pink? Do you remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
So she was hooked on the books and, you know, bought those. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know why flamingos are pink. And then fast forward, it's the evening and I'd sold books to this family. It was a single mom and she had 2 kids, and I had sold books to them. And the son was so sweet. He was like, oh, I'll take you around. He got on his bike and he's like, I'll show you where all the kids are in the neighborhood, like all the houses that have kids. And I was like, sweet, instant pre-approach. I don't have to do anything. He's going to literally show me every single house that has kids. But as we're going and he's showing me where the kids are, he's very loud. And I was like, he's a little loud. And this is summer, right? So people are having barbecues and things in their backyards. And there was outside and there was this like little, you know, shindig happening in a backyard. And then he had been yelling, basically, they have kids. This house has kids. This house has kids. And so I get to that house and knock on the door, and this woman reams me out. And she's like, what are you doing going around the neighborhood asking where all the kids are? Blah, 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 blah. Like she was pissed. And so I knew immediately she's going to call the cops. Like I just knew this woman's going to call the cops on me. Yes. So fast forward, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, it's like, whoop, 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 whoop. And I get my blue light award. This is my first blue light award. So I get pulled over by the cops, and it's, you know, 2 cops, the driver and the passenger cop. And they, you know, roll down the window, and they're like, hey, you know, are you the one that's going around the neighborhood? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, are you the one that's like selling the books? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And one of the cops goes, yeah, like you went to UCLA or you go to UCLA, right? And I said, yeah. Because I hadn't told that woman that. I hadn't gotten that far in my approach
Oh,
to
shit.
tell her that I went to UCLA. So I'm like, yes. How does he know I went to UCLA? And I think he could see on my face I was confused. So he said, yeah, don't worry about it. You're fine. You sold books to my wife this morning.
Yeah.
She was the flamingos are pink. Yeah.
Tell me why, baby.
Yep. And so he's like, you're all good, but you do need a permit. So let us take you down we'll just go take you down right now and write you up a little permit. So as I'm like in the back of this squad car, they're driving me down to wherever the place was. And he told me the whole story. He's like, yeah, you knocked on our door and it was so freaking early and I didn't want to have to answer the door. So I hopped in the shower so my wife would have to. And then once you left, I'm in the shower and she runs up and she's asking me if I knew why flamingos were pink. That was great. So that was a fun one.
The one question that saved that neighborhood for you.
Saved
That's
it.
so great.
Yeah.
Hey, they're
That
pink
was
because
cool.
of the shrimp they eat, folks. In case
you
you're
didn't know, flamingos are
case
pink
you're
because they eat shrimp.
uninitiated.
Yes.
In
Yeah,
case
that
you
was
haven't
fun.
heard about shrimp.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Oh yeah. Well, hey, it's time for some ponytails then.
Okay.
Even though you've been telling, like, so just for people who are listening, and this is their first episode, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are friends of yours who are like, what the hell does he mean by ponytails? I thought this was been ponytails. So ponytails are the segment of our show. It's the last bit where we ask our guests to give us their favorite stories. By the way, there's been ambulances coming by your apartment 3 times. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, sorry. I live in New York City. That's what's
I
happening.
know. I was gonna say that. It sounds like we got some.
I'm so sorry. I'm used to it.
No,
it's like white noise to me at this point.
Yeah, it's like you're like, I'm kind of getting sleepy after this. I sleep with this. No, yeah, I wish I could live in New York City. But anyway, so the ponytails is where we tell our guests if they could save their best or favorite stories. It could be a series of bunch of different stories. It could be just like one main one that they love, where they get to talk about something that they look back on that was really great. Could be something crazy that happened to them. It could be something interesting from a craziness standpoint. I don't know, but I never know what it is. It's always a blast to find out. And so now, Dana, your ponytails.
Yes. Okay. So I will share my two favorite customers in all of my summers selling books. So one's pretty quick and the other one's a little bit longer. So the quick one was my first summer. So this was New Jersey. Actually, both of these were my first summer in New Jersey. So I was, no, actually, I'm going to share 3 because 2 of them are quick. So one was I had gone into this apartment. My first summer I was selling like Section 8 housing. So
as we do to not get the cops called. They won't call the cops.
True.
You can get a lot of practice.
And the little girls will braid your hair if you sit on the curb. So I went into this apartment and it was a girl who was in high school, Jessica, and her aunt and uncle were raising her. So her uncle Lou, I was talking to her uncle Lou, and he was really concerned. And it was one of those stories where he asked me like, hey, would you be willing to just chat with her a little bit? Like, would you talk to her a little bit? Cause she doesn't like school. And she's talking about how she doesn't want to stay in school and she doesn't want to be in school anymore. And, would you just spend 5 minutes with her? And so I was like, sure. So I, spent 5 minutes with her and I don't know, told her how fun college is and she should totally go to college. And fast forward probably a couple of weeks and he like caught up with me in the street. And he was like, I just want to thank you for whatever you said to her, because whatever you said, all she is talking about now is how she wants to go to college and she wants to go to law school and she wants to be a lawyer. So that was really cool. Yeah.
You didn't sell books to sell books. You sell books to that.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So that was really rewarding. And then the other quick one that's just kind of fun, that was a really good like learning lesson, was I was, again, I'm a walker. So I'm walking down the street in my little neighborhood.
That sucks.
And this woman like drives by and, stops her car and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found you. I've been looking everywhere for you. I've been looking all over the neighborhood. And I'm like, I don't know who this woman is. Maybe she wants to buy books. Her friend told her. I don't know. And she's like, I've been trying to find you and trying to search for you because I had to apologize to you. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she said, I am so, so sorry. You came to my house and I was so rude to you. And I didn't give you the time of day.
What?
Yeah. And I did not even remember this woman. I had blocked all the bad stuff out.
Yeah, you just forget all the shitty ones.
You forget it. Yeah. So
No, you remember the real shitty ones.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the,
yeah,
The
for
general, we're not interested. Get out of my house. You're like,
yeah.
whatever.
But she literally for days had been trying to find me, chase me down, found me so that she could apologize to me. And she told me, she said, literally right before you rang the doorbell, my toddler had flung like spaghetti sauce all over the kitchen, and my whatever her other kid was had knocked something over and broken something. And so she's like, that literally happened just before you rang the doorbell. And so it wasn't you, and I took it out on you, and I'm so sorry. And it was like, that has stuck with me because it was just this reminder that the one piece of advice my dad gave me before my first summer, because he'd been in sales his whole career, is he said, when people say no, they're not rejecting you, they're refusing your product. And that was just such a great example and reminder for me that you never know what the other person is going through or what literally might have just happened. And so, I love the 4 agreements. And my favorite agreement is don't take anything personally. And so it's just that reminder for me of like, don't take it personally. Like, it wasn't personal. It was something she was experiencing and she took it out on me. So I loved that story.
And further on that, I love this point, and I'm going to take a quick second to pause because there's a second thought to that.
Yes.
Is I used to do the training on this. So when I was training and prepping first years for this, I go, you're going to get to a house and someone's going to just destroy you. They're going to be rude to you. They're going to be mean to you. But just put yourself in that perspective, right? Do you have a toddler? And let's just take this woman's case, for example, right? They just threw spaghetti at the wall, and I don't have kids, but I have nephews and my wife has nephews, and I can imagine, right, how infuriating even something that simple can be. And then knock on the damn door and it's some college kid, right? But regardless of what's happening on the other side of the door, you have no right to not show up as your best self and treat them with your best self. Like, if they're not giving you their best, that doesn't mean you get to sink down. You still have to show up because you're professional and because you're you and you're a strong-willed person and you're, your emotions are in check. You're an emotional giant, that you can still say, hey, that's okay. And that's like, so beyond like not taking it personally, it's also just like they deserve your best every time.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the best ever, but like at whatever you can give the best at that time, that's what you need to do and move on.
Totally.
So good. Great lesson. Wow.
It is a really good lesson. Like what you're alluding to, or what you're referring to also, that's why I've never liked, like, there's like little, not memes, but it was going around for a while. It probably still does. Like when people on the internet will say like, I'll treat you based on how you treat me. Like, if you've seen stuff like that. And I'm always like, no, like you should not be able to dictate my behavior. Someone else's attitude should not be able to dictate your behavior. Like, why are you allowing other people to have that much control over you? You should be you regardless of how people treat you. But I'm not going to treat somebody based on how they treat me. I'm treating them based on my own character. Like, that's how it should be. Right. So yeah, that was a great lesson. I like that one.
Oh, that's good. Write that down.
Good. I know. Lots of gems. The Ponytails podcast is full of gems. Okay. So you want my favorite story?
I love when these sound bites come up because we're probably going to take that and just clip it into like a trailer.
Perfect.
Where you're just like, the Ponytails podcast is, just keep saying things at the Ponytails podcast and then something positive. We'll just clip it.
Awesome.
Just pick your favorite one.
The Ponytails podcast is the best podcast on Spotify.
Clip it. What else? It's bigger than Kevin Hart. Say that now.
Oh, yeah. The Ponytails podcast is bigger than Heartbeat Productions.
We're just going to take 3 different... maybe we'll just take this whole clip and just show people the transparency of... But the first one was organic. The other two I inspired, but we'll just say that. It's
all good. They can be inspired.
The first one was organic. I loved it. Yes. Have you not heard about us? Actually, our tagline was going to be, have you heard about us? Which
amazing.
I thought was really funny, right? But we went, and I might change it back, but we went with, how'd you do? because that was like the Dan Moore thing. Where he was
Oh,
like, when you come back from the summer, and it's like, how'd you do? Or
yeah.
whatever. So
That's a
you
good
know,
one.
Ponytails podcast. How'd you do?
I like Have You Heard About Us, though?
So good, right?
That's so good.
On our website, where I'm developing our website right now, and it's gonna say, it says knock knock to welcome you. It says knock knock, welcome to the neighborhood, and it says, have you not heard about us?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
fun.
that it has to be the second approach.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
guess you haven't heard about me yet.
Not heard about me. It's so good. It's so good. Okay, sorry. Okay, all right. Your favorite ponytail?
My favorite is just, I think, such a cool story. So remember, my first summer, I'm a walker. I have no car. We've established that.
Yeah.
And I remember going into the summer, I asked Ruthie, once I understood the whole delivery week situation, I said, well, what do you do for delivery week when you don't have a car? And she's very nonchalantly, she said, oh, you just ask to borrow somebody's car.
No big deal.
And I thought that was the most ludicrous suggestion I had ever heard in my life, because we've also already established my mother, and my mother would never in a billion years allow somebody to borrow a car. That is like insanity. Now because I'm a book person, I don't have a car anymore because I live in New York. But when I had a car, I would let people borrow my car all the time. Who cares? It's just a car, right? But going into the summer, I thought this was the craziest idea ever, because my mother would never let somebody borrow a car. That's just like insanity. So I'm like, okay, Ruthie, sure. So we're getting close to the end of the summer. And my roommate, who's the B manager, she keeps asking, what are you going to do about a car? Do you have a car lined up? What are you going to do about a car? You need to have a car. You've sold a lot of books. You need to have a car. So it is the Saturday or Sunday. It's the Sunday before delivery week. And I had been so afraid to ask anybody because I thought it was the craziest thing to ask for. So I hadn't asked anybody to borrow a car. And it is Sunday before delivery week. And Maya, my roommate, she's like, you have to figure something out. Think about all the people you've sold books to. Who has a spare car? Like, think about all the customers. Who do you know has a second car? And so I thought back to, there was this single dad who had like a kindergartner. And I remember he had a work car. So he had his truck, and then he had this work truck. And I was like, ooh, I could ask him. Because he was also kind of flirty, you know?
Single dads. I've heard from, I'm not a woman, but from a lot of the book girls that we've had on here, it's like when there's a single dad, in fact, we had a story of a single book girl who met a single dad, and there was some romance.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there was a romance.
There's a ponytail in there. Yeah. When I tell you, we've heard it all.
Okay. This had no romance, but he was a little flirty. And so I'm like, oh, I bet you he would let me borrow that car. So it's Sunday nighttime. It's dark. And I go to his house. I'm like, hey, you got the little card that I'm going to come deliver the books this week. I have a really crazy favor to ask of you. It's okay if you say no, but I was wondering if there's any possible way I have to deliver. Is there any possible way I could pay you to like rent your car from you, basically, right? Because I'm 19 years old. I can't, you have to be what, 25, 26 to rent a car? Yeah.
Or if you're not, it's like expensive as hell. Like, it's
like I'm not,
insured.
I can't rent a car.
It's crazy.
So I'm like, could I pay you and, borrow your truck or your work truck or whatever? And he's like, well, you don't have to pay me, but you can use it, but you can only use it for one day because I need it for work or something. There was something about his work truck. And he's like, I need it for the rest of the week, but you can use it for Monday and try to figure something else out. So I was like, okay, no problem. Thank you so much. I'll take it. This is amazing. I'll take it. So it's Monday of delivery week, and I'm using this dad's, it was like a Ford Explorer, a little SUV. And so to rewind a little bit, my first summer was 2002 in northern/central New Jersey, meaning it was the summer after 9/11.
Yes.
And I'm selling in neighborhoods where a lot of people had lost people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what was so fascinating to me and why I had such an enjoyable summer and it felt like such an adventure there was a very different, like, I don't even know how to describe it. There was a different energy in the air, especially in this region of the country, because of what they had gone through. And it was still very fresh, right? This was less than a year later. And so people just had a different sense of perspective. It was like the little things didn't matter so much, and they didn't blow things out of proportion. And it was
the last time things were not as politically like intense. Like there wasn't so much.
yes,
Everybody was united because it's
everybody
like
was
we all got attacked.
united. Yeah, it was very neighborly. Like it was all about like helping your neighbor and protecting each other. And so there was all of that going on. So rewind, and then I got to come back to the delivery week. So rewind a little bit. I probably should have started here. So earlier in the summer, we would drive from our host family, right, our HQ, to Denny's. That was our breakfast spot, was Denny's. And my roommate, she was working a territory that was like 30 or 45 minutes north. Her territory was kind of far. So she would drop me off. Like we would drive from our HQ through another town, and then she would drop me off. So we're driving through this town. And every time we drive through this one road to get to Denny's, there's this huge house that had recently been built. I remember it was the left-hand side of the road. There's this massive brand new house. Like it still had gravel and stuff in the driveway. And, but we would drive by it every single morning. And it wasn't part of my territory. So one morning, you get delirious and you get bold. So one morning, it's like 7:00 in the morning or whatever it was before we go to breakfast, 6 something. And this house had its own parking lot across the street. So we're driving and I was like, Maya, I want to knock on that house. Can we stop? I want to knock on that house. And it was like, it's not in my territory, so I'm never going to get to knock on it. Who cares? She's like, okay. So pulls into the driveway and I go knock on this house. I walk up the stairs and I knock on this house, and it is early. But as I'm walking up in the, you look inside the cars as we do, because we're creeps. So I look inside the car and see there's a baby seat. There's a car seat in the car. So I'm like, oh, safe. This house has a baby, so they're going to be up early. So I knock on the door or ring the doorbell, I can't remember. And immediately a dog starts barking like crazy. So I'm like, oh, great. If they weren't awake, they are now. And this woman comes to the door. Clearly, I woke her up. Like she's rubbing her eyes. She just woke up. And she's like, what is this? What is this? And I'm doing my approach, like I'm the one talking to the moms. She was like, can you come back? It's very early. Like, can you, sure. Just, can you come back another time? And so I'm like, okay, no problem. So, get in the car, go to breakfast. Well, fast forward a few weeks, I am in that territory now because I used up all my territory. So this was the next town over. So I go to her house again, but this time it's, during the daytime. And I'm like, hey, remember me? Like I told you I'd come back. And she's like, oh, sure. Come on in. Come on in, whatever. She was so sweet, but very somber. Like she was just tired. Like her energy was just tired. And she had a 9th grader, Joe. And I did my demo, and her best friend was there, and her best friend was sitting on the couch with a baby. So the car seat was her best friend's baby. It wasn't hers. So I do my whole demo, and she, asks her son, like, well, what do you think? Do you think these would be helpful? And he's like, yeah, I do. I think they'd be helpful. And she's like, no questions asked, hands me her Amex card. And she's like, yeah, we'll take the whole thing. And I was like, ooh, awesome. Right. Amazing. And, come to find out her story. So she, as we're talking, her, best friend was on the couch with the baby. And there was this picture on the mantle of a police officer, and, came to learn her story that she was also a police officer, and she had retired early after 9/11 because her fiance had died in the Twin Towers. He was a Port Authority police officer, and he had gone in and one of the towers collapsed on him. And so you could just see like how much it affected her. And the baby, her best friend's baby, she had named after him. The best friend's, the little boy, little infant baby, and his name was Kenny. I know. And I just could not believe like the money didn't matter, right? It was like, I could see the money didn't matter to her. Like things like that did not matter to her anymore. It was like, okay, if this is going to help my son, who cares about the money? The little things didn't matter. So, but she had told me, I told her the delivery week, right? And the delivery week was the anniversary of 9/11 because UCLA is on the quarter system. So we sold all the way up until like
Through
September.
Yeah.
And so delivery week was the week of 9/11. 9/11 was a Wednesday, I think. And so she said, okay, but if you're going to do it that week, you have to come to our house on Monday because we're leaving on Tuesday to go to the city for the anniversary, the year anniversary. Yeah, the memorial.
Big memorial. Yeah.
Huge. So she's like, you have to come Monday. And so I'm like, okay, no problem. We'll come Monday. So fast forward, right? I'm driving the single dad's truck. I go to their house. It's, I think, one of the last houses of the day. And I'm delivering the books. And she's like, oh, thank God. We didn't think you were coming and we're leaving tomorrow. Like we were waiting for you to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're leaving tomorrow. And so I do the whole demo and I do this. And she turns to me and she says, wait a second, weren't you walking or riding a bike or something? And I was like, yeah. She said, so how are you delivering all these books? And I was like, well, funny story.
Funny you should ask.
Funny you should ask. I have this truck for today because a dad let me borrow it. But to be totally honest, I don't really know what I'm going to do the rest of the week. I don't know because I just have this car for the day. And she turned to her son and they just had this look. They just looked at each other and they kind of nodded to each other. And she was like nodding, yes. And he's like, yeah. And they had this unspoken thing. And she said, this like makes me emotional every time I tell the story. So she said, well, do you want to take Kenny's truck? And I was like,
oh my
what?
God.
She said, well, yeah, it's just been sitting in the driveway for a year. You might as well use it. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, I can't. That is such a generous offer. I can't. That is too much for you to offer. And she was like, no, we insist. Like, nobody's using it. You might as well get use out of it. And she's like, it's literally been sitting there for a year because I'm not going to drive it. And I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And she says, Dana, I'm a cop. It's not like you could steal it. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Wow.
Yeah. But she said, just to warn you though, like there's cop stickers and stuff on the truck. So, and everybody in town knows that's Kenny's truck. So you just may get some weird looks. So she's like, if you get some weird looks, don't worry about it because people know that that's his car. And that is my all-time favorite book story because I could not believe how much this woman had lost and was still willing to give. She lost everything and she was still so generous and willing to share. Like, it makes me sad. Well, grateful and emotional. But yeah, so I used Kenny's truck to deliver books the rest of the week. And then, yeah, ever since then, like even before I lived in New York, whenever I would come visit, his name is in the memorial. So I'd always go to his name and it's crazy. Yeah. So that's my fave. And he's in the museum. He's featured in the museum, the 9/11 museum. I know.
Wow.
You didn't know I was going to leave you with that.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
A couple of things. One, I don't know if I should tell this story because I had another question and oh gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That was intense.
Yeah. You're welcome.
2, I will, because I love New York City. It's my favorite city in the world. If I go to New York City,
yes,
we will go out for a beer.
Okay.
On Kenny, to celebrate Kenny.
Let's do it.
Just our friendship in general.
Yes.
And we will go to the memorial and go check it out.
I will show it to you. Kenny teaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
The memorial is beautiful. I went there after my first summer. I sold in upstate New York.
Oh.
Yeah. So one of my first things about like when I, because you're in the info session and they talk to you about all this stuff. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to go was because my bucket list was to go to New York City.
Oh, and they knew in the info session that where you were going?
At
They
that
didn't
point,
tell
because
us
I
that
got
until
recruited.
sales
I got
school.
recruited like, well, we knew we were going to upstate New York. They didn't know what town
Oh.
specifically, but they're like, and the Forest, Nebraska kids, we'd always go to New England or that area of the country. It was
Oh,
like,
that's
I sold
right.
Vermont,
Yeah,
New Hampshire, Massachusetts, all this.
Okay.
So we knew we were going to New York State. But at the end of the summer, I flew my brother after deliveries week. I was like, I gotta go to New York City. So I flew my brother to LaGuardia, picked him up, and
Oh, that's
we
fun.
with like some of my extra, I didn't remit all my money, and I had like extra. I'm like, I know I made a lot of money because I sold like PC and stuff, and I was like, I know I'm gonna get a check, but this will take some from my check, but we like went to sit in Times Square and all this stuff. But one of the things we did is we went to the memorial, and it was just almost being done. It was like 2012, so it was just not totally finished, but there was like a memorial there. And it was just the feeling in that space is surreal. Like the energy
it's
in
very
that space is
heavy.
really intense.
Yeah.
And but what was trippy is, so they the fountains of the where the two towers are, so we stick our hand in there, and in the water we stick our hand in the water because you can like reach under there like where the names are written, and there's water that goes under. So we stuck our
I didn't know that.
So we stuck our hand in the water just casually, like just to like feel the energy or something. I don't know. We thought that was worth I don't know. Anyway, we look up, and the last name, one of the victims was Gamboa. Their last name was Gamboa. And we were like, out of all the boat towers, and you know how big those squares are.
Huge.
I mean, and the names are small.
All of the names. There's literally thousands of names.
Thousands.
Oh
literally.
my gosh.
And we just happened to be like, we just casually picked a spot and put our hand in the water.
What?
And we looked, and the last name was Gamboa. And we were like, whoa, it was fucking trippy. Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it.
Insane. Yeah,
wasn't that insane? That's the only you made me think of that. So sorry, I didn't mean to piggy tail on your
no, that's
story, but I'm like,
incredible.
Think of that. Wow, I got usually we end after the ponytail, but I got one last question for you because I'm really intrigued. What did your mom say after you came home?
Oh,
how did she feel about you going out?
This is a great way this is a good callback. This is what they call a callback. Very good. Yes.
Now I'm in like top 3 best comics because I'm so good at callbacks.
Yes.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. After my summer, she did say that was the best thing you could have done for yourself. And she became a big fan, and she became a parent that she would allow other parents to call her when their kids were going out for their first summer. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. What was your mom's name?
Best thing you could have done. Jan.
Yes, Jan. Go, girl.
Yep. Yeah. She saw what it did for me.
Wow. What a way to
became a fan.
Jan.
Yeah.
Wow. Dana, this has been a blast. Can you believe we talked for 3.5 hours?
No.
It goes like the record's 4 hours. So
oh my gosh.
Records today. But yeah, Pedro Vega. We talked and we looked up and I'm like, holy shit. But hey, good conversations and good times. We'll pause it here. We'll close it here, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you stay on. Don't leave yet.
I won't.
After we okay, guys. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Andres Gamboa. If you enjoy this episode, thank you for making it all the way through. It honestly means a lot. I know it's probably a couple commutes to and from work, but I promise that all of our episodes are filled with like gold nuggets.
Or maybe it's your caravan as you're driving across the country to go to sales school.
Yeah. A lot of book kids actually listen to these during the summer. We found out last year there was like and I found out that Emma Barnett uses some of our episodes to train first years before they go out because there's like certain things that happen or like things that we say that's like genuine. I'm like, I should charge them for that. No, I'm kidding. It's free to use. You guys, anybody that gets use out of them, however they get use of them, that's great. But thank you so much for listening. Tune in on the next one. By the way, tomorrow I'm catching a flight to go record with Dan Moore in person at the company in his whole office. It's going to be a really, really special episode. When we started this show, I remember looking across to Nick Traverti, who helped me start it, and some of the other people that we were talking to. We said, someday we're going to have Dan Moore on the show.
Amazing.
And that's happening on Friday. So it's something that we're super proud of. Hopefully you guys tune in for not only that episode, but some of the other big ones to come. They're all pretty big in my book. Everybody has taught me something. I am probably the most advanced salesman in the world because I just sit for 2 hours and listening to people's advanced sales on life. So thank you so much for joining us, Dana. If you guys want to get a hold of Dana, by the way, you can go find her on Instagram. We'll put the link to that below. She's also on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Or if you don't, I don't know, we could probably figure out a way. If you message us, we can try to connect you with her, whether that's something that you want to go do and work for her or learn from her, get coaching from her, or anybody at Southwestern Consulting. Feel free to do that, as well as check out the opportunities from our other partners on the show below. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Andres Gamboa. Peace out, everyone.